Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about What If Naruto x Rias x Akeno Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. My son approached. Within a castle tower, the cobblestone interior bathed in crimson light, a young man stood inhabiting a throne room of sorts. Of average build and height, what stood out most about him was the stark contrast his golden blonde head of hair had offered comparison to the dwelling's decor, made mostly of sharp and vile things twisted in unnatural directions and covered in what could easily pass as blood. He acknowledged the order with a curt nod, his body bending forward. Blue eyes flickered toward the throne, tinged with the shade of a robin's egg. Before him, a throne of blackened claws dominated the middle of the room with its presence. One other person was present, and her soft behind sat naked upon the seat with no complaint. Tomato red hair cascaded down her back and fell upon the black spikes, offering her lithe body a soft cushion. Mother. The young man could not help but track his eyes across the matriarch's supple, white skin. Her voluptuous were hidden behind just a few thin locks of hair. The idle motion of her crossed legs shifting from one side to the other served as a distraction he could not simply ignore. In his mind, he imagined she teased him like that on purpose. Kushina, ignorant to her son's vivid imagination, shifted comfortably in her seat. Today was a joyous day, and she had no intention of squandering it. For it was finally time for her son to make his first trip to the human realm, and how anxious she was for him to start. Too long had they been forced to hide themselves away from the other devils, in the corner of the world where no one would pay attention to. It was time for their clan to return to greatness, and her son would be the one to bring them back on that path. She had waited so long for this moment, that she had to bite her tongue to cull her excitement. Naruto, you know what you must do, don't you? It was more of a rhetorical question than anything. She had been preparing them for the past few years. Her son knew what was at risk, more than anyone. Yes, mother. Naruto shifted uncomfortably. I take it the preparations for living have been made? Of course. She waved his concerns. Your things have been packed? A simple nod was her reply. There really was little else to say. Pleasantries aside, she knew her son was stalling for time. He had never left her sight since he was born, and no doubt he had secretly detested the contents of the day's itinerary. But just as he was weaned from her milk, he would learn to live without her in the same home. Very well then. She waved her hand and a magic circle appeared beneath his feet. Are you ready? Naruto took another look around what had become a very common, boring sight for his relatively young life. As much as it would pain him to leave, the excitement of traveling to a new realm was not something lost on him. If his mission would bring happiness to his mother, then he would complete it without fail. When his father died, it fell to him to protect the family, and see his mother's desire come to fruition. No one would stop the rise of the Mammon, as long as he was still alive. Mother, before I go, he struggled to express his desires. As a devil and a noble, he was raised to make clear his wants and needs and even take whatever he pleased. The only one he could not express his will to was his mother, who ironically taught him everything he would need to make his wishes come true. Somehow, she had never once acknowledged him past that of an heir, and perhaps a tool to be used. Kushina shifted on the throne, pondering her son's hidden request. This just won't do, will it? Then, she rose from the throne and began to make her approach. Each step was even with the other as his mother showed off the royal etiquette she was raised with. More noticeable was each step she took caused her sizable bust to sway and slap the skin beneath. Her arms wrapped around his neck, cradling his body in her grasp. With just a touch, the resistance in his body gave way and he fell into the hold. As if she were a fragile piece of art, his arms were slow to wrap about her waist. There, my child. One of her hands forcefully grasped his hand and placed it on her waist. One last embrace before I let you go. Naruto was muffled as he was buried into the crook of her neck, inhaling the sweet scent of her perfume. He felt something wet pressed gently against his cheek. Mother is kissing me? It was too much to bear. He was so close, yet so far. The stimulation stunned him into inaction, and he was slowly wrapped around his mother's finger. I have one last gift for you, before you leave me. She pushed away, allowing them to have some breathing space. Kushina held up the palm of her hand, as if to offer something to him. A small blast of energy erupted, and two chess pieces came into being. One was a blood-red king piece, and the other a pearlescent white pawn. After only a moment of existence, the pawn transformed into the shape of a bishop, then a knight, a rook, and then a queen. It continued to switch between shapes at random, and Naruto had difficulty identifying just what it was he was looking at. For you, my son. She thrust her palm out toward him, and the pieces gravitated toward his chest. Two evil pieces, a king for yourself, and a mutation piece I obtained some time ago. Kushina narrowed her eyes and for the first time since the beginning of their talk appeared to be genuinely concerned. Do not waste their power on weaklings. You will only have one chance to use it. He could do nothing but hold his chest and feel the power emanating from the artifacts. The trust his mother gave him to hold on to such things meant she was no longer willing to hold back on him. There was no turning back, for either of them. My dear Naruto, please come back soon. A magic circle appeared beneath him again as crimson light covered his vision. In the middle of the embrace, His mother had summoned another circle and sent him through. Now, he found himself hurtling through space and time with the portal to his home growing more and more distant. His mother had given him the tools. Now it was his turn to show he knew how to use them. The damn sun is going to make living here a lot more annoying. Atop a building's roof, Naruto looked down upon the city his mother had sent him to. Set within a valley, it was the very model of peace and seclusion. The central piece was the Human Academy, named after the town of Kuo. It must have been a school day, as he saw many humans the same age as him in their school uniforms heading toward the city center. The sun was sweltering hot, even after he had changed into the school blazer and matching pants. He had no idea how the humans could handle that kind of heat. The rays of light beat down on him and sapped all the energy in his body. It would definitely take some getting used to, and he would have to move around at night primarily if he wanted to keep it from permanently affecting him. Not to mention, he could not allow the humans to notice his presence. Luckily, no one was around to see him use his wings for the moment or two he needed them, but he was sure it would not remain that easy. Devils were fortunate enough to look very similar to humans naturally, so no one had given him an odd look quite yet. That was good considering his objective here was focused on not attracting unwanted attention. Until he had followers or at least some powerful friends, the shadows were not going to be safe for him to roam in. Just have to keep my eyes on the prize. The faster he completed his objectives, the faster he could return to his mother's side. If that was not enough to spur him forward, his personal goals aligned well with Kushina's wishes. His mother always told him the Mammon were well known for wanting more than they could have, sometimes for better, but often for worse. He planned to turn his family's curse around, one battle at a time. Him being sent to the town of Ko was not by chance, either. It was a well-known fact throughout the Underworld that this place held great significance for all three of the major factions. That meant that, apart from other devils, he would be dealing with both variants of angels, fallen and otherwise. Though he had never met an angel, from the stories he heard from his mother, they were not ones to be underestimated. Especially the fallen, since they fell from their god's grace for one reason or another. Tricks and underhanded tactics were their namesake, and so he would keep his guard up if he were to find one. But he could care less about how politics boiled down between the three groups. He was raised as one of the extra demons, after all. Ousted, voluntarily or otherwise by the current devil government, the Mammon were among those who avoided the 72 pillars at all costs. If his mission were successful, however, his mother hoped their name would return to the forefront of devil society. Naruto leaped down onto the street below and joined the crowd headed for the school grounds. Humans were the treasures and lifeblood that kept the three factions going after the Great War. They were the primary reason why Naruto had come to Ko in the first place. For if the Mammon were to return, they would need influence, and the easiest way for a devil to gain influence was through martial strength. Sacred gears, artifacts of power only born to those with human blood in their veins, were the key to gaining any kind of power in the world. Angels, fallen angels, and devils all were attracted in some way to that power and had found ways to incorporate these valuable humans into their ranks. At least with the devils, they had created the evil peace system that Naruto was now a part of with the king piece embedded inside of him. Though he only had one other piece to use for now, with time he could grow out his peerage to span the entire set. To grow and nurture that family was Naruto's goal, and it worked well with his mother's desires of total domination. If they were going to have any chance at returning from the outskirts of society, they would need a strong group of followers. And so, Naruto began his hunt for the strongest of humans within the grounds of Ko Academy. Known to host the most gifted of humans, he had high hopes for what he would find inside. Unfortunately, he was quickly disappointed when he saw a group of boys being beaten senseless by a crowd of young women. Screams and shouts hinted that the culprits had been found peeping on the girls' locker room. If that was the kind of resource pool he was looking at, things were grim. Naruto continued with the crowd and found himself inside the school building as the bell began to ring for the first series of classes. Inside, the floor was a checkerboard tile and the building reeked of grandiose Western architecture. There was a feeling in the back of his head that he was being watched. With a few cautious glances, he took in his surroundings in an attempt to locate the source of his discomfort. There, two young women on the second-floor balcony overlooking the lobby. One leaned against the railing, with brown hair cut short away from her bespectacled eyes. The other was a stunning vixen that momentarily reminded Naruto of his mother, long red hair and a set of crisp aquamarine eyes. What was even more noticeable and surely appealing to such perverts outside was her incredible bust size, especially in comparison to her shorter compatriot. Neither of them seemed threatening. In fact, the crimson-haired beauty was smiling. If it was not for the fact he had lived with a woman for his whole life, he might have passed it off as nothing. But he could tell that behind those eyes, menacing plans were being concocted. If their familiar energy was anything to go by, the suspicions they had of each other were right. Devils, the lot of them. Interesting to see they had a similar idea of infiltrating the school to gather their pieces. No matter, as long as they did not approach him, he would give them the same courtesy. When another group of kids came around the corner to head for class, Naruto got up from the column he had been leaning against and disappeared with the crowd. Time to see what the School of the Gifted has to offer, Naruto said, as he entered a classroom at random. Rias, what do you think about him? Sona, the student council president, asked as the crowds began to fade for the first classes of the day. The other devil's presence had been quite obvious, even before he had entered the school building. Lucky for him the humans could not feel such otherworldly energy, otherwise he would have stuck out like a sore thumb. He must have been new to the human realm to make such a common mistake. Rias hummed, leaning against the rail next to her friend. I'm not sure who he is, but you could feel the energy inside, right? Yes. Sona adjusted her glasses. A king piece. Odd to find another one of us here. Is it really though? Rias had a hard look on her face. We can't be the only ones to see the value in this place. It was only a matter of time, really. I suppose so. Sona conceded. Her eyes flicked down the hall where Tsubaki, her vice president, approached. Do you plan on meeting him? Rias paused for a moment to consider her answer. Then, she just shrugged and gave her old friend an assuring smile. I don't think so. He doesn't seem like a troublemaker, so I think I will take a wait-and-see approach. With luck, he's just visiting. The chances of a devil with such natural power just visiting their quaint little town were slim to none. Rias and Sona both had an obligation to keep the peace, and so of course the blonde's presence was a bit concerning. However, arranging a meeting out of the blue would only escalate the situation. With time, new opportunities would arise to meet with the new devil. Then I'll leave first. Sona waved to her friend and past her vice president, who bowed and followed her from behind. Rias hesitated a moment longer, her eyes lingering on the hallway their new friend had disappeared in. Her soft lips quirked as a bit of excitement came over her. Someone new to town was not always a bad thing. She hoped that if he were a friendly devil, they could make an acquaintance one day. For a Gremory, an acquaintance one day soon meant an ally the next, and Rias Gremory was always looking to expand her family. See you later, Devil-kun. Naruto slumped back into his apartment, feeling quite exhausted after the first day of classes. What a boring set of material the teachers had them go over. The things the other children were learning was something Naruto had been taught many years ago. Perhaps humans were not all that similar to devils after all. To rest his body, he was thankful his mother had already prepared a dwelling of sorts in the human world. How she managed it, he had no idea, but the single-bedroom flat would serve his needs well. The couch looked particularly inviting as he lay down on the dark cushions and felt his body sink into the material's creases. Now that he had a moment to think, he replayed the day over in his head to try and see if anything in particular stood out. He was not expecting any humans to openly brandish their powers, but at the same time, he had hoped there would be some inkling of potential in the masses he had surveyed during his outing. Unfortunately, apart from the female devils, none of the people he had come into contact with made their hidden strengths obvious. It seemed as though his objectives would take longer than he thought. For a moment, he even feared the other groups had gotten to the sacred gears before he had. But if that were true, there would be little reason to stay in the town. Buried treasure must have remained then, and it was up to him to find it. What little rumors he had pointed to the existence of at least one sacred gear in the city. Obviously it had been identified, though its user was not described. It was a variant of the twice critical, a relatively common dragon-type gear. Whether or not it had already been claimed was unclear, but Naruto had to bet all three factions were scrambling to get a hold of it. If he kept an eye on those other devils, they might point him in the right direction. They could just as easily steer him wrong though, and until he met them, he could only assume they had no plans of helping him find his way. Naruto sighed and reached for the coffee table in front of him. The remote was there, and he figured the best way to get in touch with humans was to immerse himself with their media. Somehow, he doubted the experience would be as enlightening as he had once hoped. At the school, while he observed his classmates, he had kept an eye on the adults as well. There was nothing stopping a sacred gear from remaining dormant until a human had reached that age. That authoritative position also gave them a perfect camouflage. His homeroom teacher was particularly odd in that she seemed more interested in seducing her male students rather than teach them. In fact, her attention was on him the entire day. The other male classmates were not particularly happy about that, but Naruto had passed it off because he had posed as a new student. He did not need to be an expert to know her attitude and methods were very different than what was generally expected of an educational institution. She could have been someone, or something, of importance too. Those with power attract others with power. Naruto quoted his mother aloud. The sound of humans speaking to one another somehow lulled Naruto to sleep as his body slumped further into the couch's embrace. Living on his own was not so bad after all. In the dead of night, an explosion of energy rocked the landscape of the quiet town of Kuo. More accurately, a sudden release of a large amount of ki. Any kind of supernatural creature would be sensitive to such a strike and surely feel it. Humans, however, would never notice such a thing had happened right in their own backyard. That was what served to wake Naruto up from his nap as he almost rolled right off the couch. Holding his head in pain, he got up to the window and tried to pinpoint just where that energy had come from. He could still feel it inside of him, churning his stomach inside out. It was not something just any person could do. That kind of energy was reserved for very powerful, very rare individuals, and the only reason they would have to release that much is if they were in the thick of a fight. Unfortunately, Whoever released that energy was completely off the radar now, which should not have been possible. A release of energy like that was basically a beacon for someone to lock onto and follow. It should not have dissipated given that small amount of time. It could only mean that someone created a barrier to keep such emissions contained and hidden. Someone must be in real trouble for them to go that extent. Dealing with someone with that kind of power was exactly what Naruto was looking for. Going alone was asking for trouble, but beggars could not be choosers. He had to buy into the pot at some point, and the jackpot was looking better and better the more he felt that energy build up inside. Let's see what we can find. Naruto opened the balcony door and revealed his pair of devil wings. With a kickoff to get him started, he leaped from the apartment railing and into the sky above Ko. Many lights were still on as the moon just began to crest. There were not very many people out for a stroll though, so it made things easy when he did not have to worry about being seen. The only problem was, he had no idea where the barrier might have been set up. If whoever built it was smart enough, they would not make it easily visible either. His best chance was to cover as much ground as fast as he could, and hope he ran into some sort of detectable magic presence. A release of ki like that has to leave behind some sort of residue. Much to his frustration, nothing of the town seemed ordinary. The apparent skill these guys had to hide from him pissed Naruto off. When he found them, they were not going to get off easy. As Naruto flew over the park, he felt the familiar tinge of magic manipulation in the back of his head. When he passed into the area, the light bended around him, and he could have sworn something pushed back against his body. Upon further inspection, he realized that his surroundings were imperfect replications of human trees, park benches, and other landscape touches that made the mark of an amateur. Jackpot, Naruto said, licking his lips in delight. He flew up until he exited the barrier and deployed his own magical circle. The crest of Mammon was a swirled pattern, colored in crimson. Using the circle as a focal point, Naruto pushed inward and forcefully made his way into whatever pocket dimension the people inside had created. Naruto was not one for subtlety, after all. The barrier quickly began to crack under pressure as Naruto poured more magical energy into his attack. Sparks flew as opposing magical forces met one another, but the glass-like barrier eventually shattered under the weight of his spell. Like a crystal ball dropped onto the ground, the light-bending wall shattered into millions of pieces. With the barrier down, Naruto flew toward the center of the park and landed on his feet. With one quick glance to take in the situation, Naruto realized he was outnumbered. In front of him were 6 people, of varying shapes and sizes, surrounding someone else whose energy matched that which he felt before. The park itself was wrecked from one hell of a battle. Both sides had taken a momentary break when the barrier went down, and neither group seemed to know what to do about his entrance. The one being accosted was a 9-tailed fox, one of the Kyuubi Yukai. Her blood-red tails that fanned out behind her human form outed her pretty easily. He knew a bit about the Kyuubi, as his mother told him that Naruto's father had been closely acquainted with one in the past. They were incredibly powerful creatures, but rarely were their kind ever found outside of Kyoto, where they ruled the other Yukai species. This particular Kyuubi, apart from a few scratches, was no worse for wear from whatever battle that had already taken place. Her long hair that flowed down her back was colored the same as her enemy's blood, crimson and dark. She wore a battle dress of some kind, a black bodysuit that covered from her thighs to her neck with matching boots and gloves. Those beady red feline eyes targeted him, sizing him up. She must have assumed he was another enemy, but perhaps she hoped he could be an ally as well. Lucky for her, he had no plans of attacking someone of her caliber, though her opponents did not look too bad either. From what he could tell, they were an assortment of devils but none that he could immediately recognize. They must have been from the extra demons, or perhaps they were strays. That would not explain why they were targeting the Yukai, except perhaps for her energy. But to fight a Yukai on their level was asking a little too much. "Who the hell are you?" One of the men shouted as Naruto finished analyzing the motley crew. The 6 assailants all looked like they were going to have a prickly demeanor. Well, he found out their secrets so it made sense, he supposed. How did he make it through the barrier? Another one said, slightly worried. It was a considerably elaborate shield, and he was very lucky to stumble onto it. However, if they were to imply the barrier was powerful enough to keep him out, then they would be sorely disappointed. His mother would have punished him severely if something like that had defeated his magic. Doesn't matter, keep on the Kyuubi. The first man turned his attention back to the 9 tails and ice shards grew from his hands. The devils slowly diverted their attention back to their original target, leaving Naruto alone. What a rude bunch, he thought. He preferred to keep cool in these kinds of situations, but the one thing that really set him off was when he was ignored. To be insulted or belittled by an enemy was one thing, but to have your presence rejected was something else entirely. Naruto narrowed his eyes as powerful demonic energy began to build up in his body. Attacking the Kyuubi was their first mistake, but forgetting about him would be their last. Oi, bastards! The vulgar language got them to turn around again. The Kyuubi had readied a fireball in her hands, but hesitated to retaliate when Naruto made his declaration. Naruto sneered. His switch had been flipped. Whenever his adrenaline got pumping, things started to get a bit loopy for him. His control slipped, and he started to enjoy the bloodlust inside of him. You got some balls, turning your back on me. Naruto's hands soon became fists as he fought to control his instincts. Let's see what you guys can do. A magical circle appeared in front of Naruto, not unlike the one he created before. Wah! His opponent's confusion quickly turned to shock as a dozen chains launched at them. Made of pure demonic energy, those chains were harmful to whoever their owner willed them to be. Right now, Naruto was not in the mood to hold back his strength as he directed the chains forward with an extended arm. The chains were also fast, too fast for the other devils to easily avoid. In quick order, the chains wrapped around two of the devils, pinning their bodies down. Pain quickly broke through their resistance, and they were forced to scream as the chains developed barbs that hooked deep into their skin. My energy! The chains are powers! The devils writhed on the ground as the bonds continued to constrict around their bodies further. They tried to describe the suffering as their bodies were enveloped by a powerful shroud of energy. The dark fields of power were not Naruto's, but their own magical energies forcefully being pulled from their bodies. That's right, Naruto said with a sinister-looking grin. These chains of mine can absorb energy, too. Naruto had planned to hold them down long enough until he had almost completely absorbed their power. Without the energy to use magic, devils were almost as worthless as a normal human in a fight. The chains were linked to his own demonic powers, and Naruto began to sense something dark rearing its head from inside their bodies the more energy he took from them. He narrowed his eyes as he tried to determine the source. What is this? This isn't from the devils, this is something much bigger. Deep inside of them, there was something foreign in their bodies that was releasing a foul energy. The cloaks of power around their bodies were quickly overtaken by a dark shroud. So strong was its release that a shock wave pushed outward from the two captured devils, and forced everyone to shield themselves. Naruto covered his eyes, taken aback by their incredible strength. He thought for sure that he had them on the ropes, but this unknown strength had surfaced when their backs were against the wall. Before long, the dark energy began to sink into his chains, turning them a sickly dark color. Have to cut the spell before it reaches back to me. With a wave of the arm, his spell circle was released. The chains disappeared from his opponents, their bodies slumped over in exhaustion. From the looks of them, their bodies were still suffering despite their power boost. If anything, Naruto's original goal to take them out of the fight had succeeded. That power could have been hiding in the others, and so Naruto was hesitant to try the same move twice. Now, the other four had chosen to sit out of the fight earlier and not help their comrades. At first, Naruto had believed they had collared themselves to prevent their friends from coming to further harm, but he started to realize they had no desire to help one another. More magical circles appeared, and a torrent of energy was launched at him, with their wounded comrades in the way. Too fast for him to dodge, Naruto was forced to create a circle of protection to stave off the attack. The torrent of energy sped across the battlefield, vaporizing the downed opponents in a split second. Blinded by the attack's overwhelming power, Naruto was pushed to the brink as he tried to maintain his shield. No good, 4 against 1 is too much. Under great pressure, the protective spell broke apart in front of him. By instinct, Naruto held up his arms to protect himself. He then felt a presence at his side, and then a great force pushed him to the ground. When he recovered, he saw the Kyuubi in front of him, containing the enemy attack with one hand. With a smack from the back of her hand, the attack was sent flying away. Fireballs formed in each of her hands, and above each tail. They were tinged white, with Naruto recognized as the infamous strength of Kitsune Fox Fire. She unleashed the barrage of attacks, forcing the remaining devils to scatter across the battlefield to escape. Each fireball exploded into a fiery mess upon impact, taking with it a chunk of the surrounding area. Somehow, apart from glancing burns, the remaining 4 had managed to avoid lethal damage. This earned them a harsh glare from the 9 tails as she began to build up an insane amount of power. Stay out of my way, boy, she said with a threatening growl attached. Getting saved by the person you were supposed to be rescuing was not the best feeling in the world. His eyes could barely follow her movements as she launched forward with incredible speed, appearing next to the closest devil. With one punch, she was able to break their magical defense and send them hurtling into the ground. Such strength was not focused solely on her human extremities, as the tails whipped at the devils too foolish to get close. Naruto dusted himself off and hesitated to leap back into the fight. He would probably just get in the woman's way, or worse, get himself attacked. Still, the adrenaline pumping through him refused to let him stay out of the way for long. He noticed that a couple of the devils had managed to avoid the Kyuubi's focus and were creating a large magical circle between them. Releasing his wings, Naruto flew at them in an attempt to halt their counterattack. A combination attack required a great amount of practice, considering the depth of the calculations involved in most magic. If they were able to pull something like that off, then the attack was too dangerous to let them complete it. Moments before he reached them, an army of chains were unleashed from the depths of wherever the magical circle led to. Naruto shielded himself, but quickly found out the attack was not meant for him as it sailed past. The chains quickly found and latched onto the Kyuubi, ensnaring themselves around her body like a bad weed. Her scream of pain echoed as the spikes dug into her skin, and he could feel the energy forced out of her body as the chains absorbed it all. This attack, it's so similar to mine. But these chains aren't feeding the energy back to the devils. Where was all of that demonic energy being taken? The answer lied on the other side of the magical circle, as Naruto quickly figured out that the spell was not to create the chains, but summon them from another location. Different from his mother's spell in which demonic energy is given shape from the user's own body, these chains were physical creations imbued with the same dark magic he felt from the other two devils. The restraints forced Kyuubi down to her knees as the remaining enemies joined in with their own chains. So, they were after her energy, after all. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion. What was their objective? What were they planning to use that energy for? Whatever the results were, they could not be good. The Nine Tails would die at this rate if he did not do something. Do I have to use that? The power left behind for him by his father, passed on to him from Kushina. This might have been a good time as any to unleash it. But if he could just break their concentration, then the fox might escape. No, he would find another way. It was not time to reveal his trump card yet. I told you guys, Naruto scowled, building up more energy. Not to ignore me. With the release of his magic, a maelstrom of energy released and forced the ground beneath his feet to buckle and crack. A shroud of demonic power built around him as Naruto summoned another magical circle, then 3 more, and soon a dozen appeared in the sky surrounding them. The devils, at first completely focused on the task at hand, quickly grasped the danger surrounding them. Unfortunately, they were either unable or unwilling to cease their absorption of the Kyuubi's strength and offer no defense against his attack. This ends now. From the circles came more chains with sharpened ends, all headed straight for the devils. The spears pierced straight through their bodies, forcing them to double over in pain. They wailed in pain as more and more of the attacks collided with their body. No mercy was offered, even after they were forced to release their own attack on the Kyuubi. Devils are pretty resilient. Naruto tightened his hand into a fist as the chains began to constrict. But we all have our limits. Only when the last devil's body ceased moving did Naruto release his spell. The chains receded back into the portals, and he felt his energy return. Despite winning, he could not find it in himself to be proud of the bloody spectacle in front of him. True, his mother had taught him to fight with no heed for his opponent's life, but he detested the brutality he was forced to deploy against them. From the corner of his eye, he saw the kitsune struggle against the few chains still wrapped around her body. Despite their circles disappearing, the physical bonds remained attached to her body. He could not tell how much energy they took, but he was sure that the creature in front of him was severely weakened from the encounter. With a strangled roar, the Kyuubi shook off the rest of the chains. From the strength she had left, the Nine Tails carried herself some distance from Naruto in a vain effort to find safety. Her skin began to fizzle and smoke as the wounds healed themselves, albeit slowly. She was out of breath, and he was then very sure she was unable to fight him even if she wanted to. Naruto walked over to her, cautiously taking each step in an attempt to not antagonize her. "Hey, you alright?" he asked. The yokai shied away from his touch. Despite their common enemy, she still did not trust him. He thought that it was fair for her to feel that way, considering he was a devil too. Still, he could tell those wounds were going to be difficult to handle without enough energy, and he could barely feel her presence at all. Kyuubi collapsed to her knees from exhaustion. Instinctively, her hands covered her chest as pain racked her body. Naruto decided to keep his distance and respect the demon's privacy. If he were to go to her, he had no healing ability of his own to help anyway. His concern was useless to the Kyuubi. Ugh! Damn them, those chains stole my energy. Kyuubi's breathing was irregular, and her speech came out in labored pants. When the wounds remained on her body after the energy had dissipated, Naruto knew that her power alone was not enough to save herself. The only thing Naruto could think of was to use his evil piece, but that would bring her back as part devil. He knew of the pride associated with the Kyuubi yokai, and a full-blooded one like her meant that she would not be a fan of such an idea. But they were running out of options. "Hey, I think I have an idea of how to help." Shut up, devil. I do not need your help. Her words were harsh, but she did not even have the energy to push him away. Naruto knelt down next to her and was glad to see she offered no resistance. Whether it be from weakness or an acceptance of his help, he could not tell. "Come on, at least listen to what I have to say." When she offered no words of resistance, he took it as an invitation to continue. "I have something that can bring you back to full strength, but it's going to turn you into a half-devil." Just the thought of it instantly made the Kyuubi cringe, but she remained silent. Hopeful, Naruto continued with his pitch in hopes she would accept. "If nothing else, it would save her life. It means joining my family, too. I know how powerful the Nine Tails are, since my father was partnered with one once, so I don't plan on holding you back. The thing is, this is a deal you can't go back on." Naruto hiked a thumb over his shoulder, toward where the devil remains were. "I'm going to guess they aren't the last ones to show up trying to get your power. I can protect you more than if you were to go on your own. How about it?" The poison inside of her had taken most of Kyuubi's energy, making it difficult for her to speak. Her features remained stiff as she thought over the offer that was clearly not to her liking. Naruto always believed everyone should be given a choice with what happened in their life, but Kyuubi's choice was not particularly flattering either way. He would rather not watch her die though, so when she gave him the slightest of nods, he began to smile brightly. From within his chest, he beckoned the mutation piece to come forward and held it in his palm. With his king ability, He could sense how many pieces QB would be worth. Lucky for him, a mutation piece could be used on someone for any position, regardless of how many pieces they were worth. 11 pieces. His eyes lit up as if he had found the buried treasure of some long-dead pirate. Coming to Ko was not such a bad idea then, if he found a powerful vixen such as this. Not to mention, he could not ignore her feral allure. QB groaned in pain, shaking him from his reverie. Without any more time wasted, he inserted the piece into her chest and observed the energy of the evil piece surge through her body. The healing she once struggled to complete started again, but this time the wounds began to close with great speed. In under a minute, the fox was already up onto her own 2 feet without his help. Devil life force now flowed through her veins, just as her yukai did. As a kitsune, she was already on the high end of spiritual energy and power among her kind, and with 9 tails she was considered equal to some of the most powerful devils. Now with devil blood surging through her veins and an evil piece embedded into her chest, she had ascended to a level rarely reached by any newly resurrected devil. Naruto watched as she began to stretch her body and get used to the new strength. This was his first time seeing someone be resurrected, not to mention by his own hand. Not bad. QB offered as her observation. Welcome back, Naruto said with a friendly thumbs up. The crimson-haired woman scowled, not amused by his little joke. She crossed her arms and seemed to wait, impatiently, for him to say something. So, what am I supposed to do? Do not expect me to bow or call upon you with honorifics. You have not earned it. Naruto sighed. Starting with conditions of the relationship was really exhausting. Hey, I'm not trying to make you a slave or anything. Like I said, we are partners. He shrugged. Maybe she was educated enough to know about the devil system. It was worth a shot. If you know anything about the evil piece system, you know that as the head of a family or peerage, I have the king piece. Their most powerful partner and member of the family is the queen piece, which is what I made you. QB's eyes lit up upon hearing that she was considered a queen, though it should not have been all that new to her. If his memory served, the 9 tails often acted in leadership roles for the yukai, so she was already royalty anyway. Still, that bit of interest he hoped was enough to keep her from arguing against it. So, Queen-san, what would you like me to call you? Do you have a name? He gave her a cheeky smile as he leaned in close to tease her. The 9-tailed creature pushed him away, quite forcefully. His usual attitude did not seem to mesh well with her serious personality. You have not earned the right to know my name, let alone call me by it. For now, QB will suffice. Humph, okay QB. You can call me Naruto. There was an awkward moment after the introductions were over until Naruto remembered what time it was. Come on, we better get back to my place and rest. I can fill you in on my plans tomorrow. QB shrugged and followed behind him without another bit of interaction. The silence was uncomfortable, but Naruto had to remember the entire situation was pretty foreign to her. The idea that he had just gotten a queen, and a powerful one at that, had not completely sunken with his mind either. And so, the 2 partners left the battlefield of the park. Despite it being their first meeting place, both were eager to leave it behind. Rias, they've gone. Shall we follow? Akeno reported, still in her Miko shrine outfit. Rias and the rest of her peerage hid within the trees of the park. They had come in the middle of the battle and had expected to take part, but were pleasantly surprised to see the new devil and his 9-tailed friend finish the interlopers off. No, that won't be necessary. They have dealt with enough trouble for the night, I'd say. Despite the battle being resolved, Rias was not smiling. She would have to report such an incident to her brother and Sona to determine just what those devils were doing out here, in the human realm. Not only that, but hunting a QB of the ruling clan? The only saving grace was that the devils were not affiliated with any of the 72 pillars, and so she could only assume they were strays. However, they were quite well organized for a bunch of random servants, so she wondered if they could really be extra demons. Her curiosity did not end there. Who was that blonde devil? What was his clan? What were his intentions? Whatever he wanted could not be so innocent to pass up a wounded kitsune as he brought her into his peerage. She would not forgive him if he caused trouble in her territory, so she would need to keep a close eye on him. That magical circle and that crest. Who is this Naruto? Indeed, she had many questions for her dear brother that night. The faint sounds of an alarm forced Naruto out of his dreams and back into the real world. He had been enjoying himself in the presence of his mother back in the Underworld, a place he sorely wished to be. To be taken from such a pleasant dream made him scowl as he struggled to open his eyes against the morning sun. Sleeping caused all of his senses to dull, and so he could not tell where QB was. When they arrived at his apartment last night, Naruto had offered her the bed to take. Considering the situation, it felt like the only appropriate course of action. Surprisingly, she refused him and had chosen instead to meditate on the floor in his living area. From what little he had gleaned from his interactions with the kitsune was that she had great pride in herself. He figured that accepting his kindness was a way of showing weakness. I hope she cuts the attitude soon, though she was really difficult. Despite the fact he saved her life and offered a place as his partner, QB had dropped all niceties when she spoke to him. Somehow, he still had not earned the right to even carry on a proper conversation with someone of her ability. At this rate, they were not going to function well as a team. Naruto released the yawn building up inside of him. Carefully, he rubbed his eyes and decided that it was truly time to wake up. A lot of things would have to be resolved today, so there was no point in resting further. Well, maybe I can. In front of him, an immensely powerful presence released a burst of ki. Naruto's eyes burst open as he saw Kyuubi launch one of her fists, covered in fire, at his face. He forced himself to roll out of the way and grunted in pain as he fell onto the wooden floor. Now on the ground, he managed to recover himself and rise to his knee, his eyes locked with his unsuspected opponent, who had rounded the bed to stand above him with a menacing look in her eyes. What Naruto's confusion quickly shifted as he grasped the situation at hand. His voice took a heavy tone as his own eyes began to match the harshness of the 9 tails in front of him. So, you are trying to run away? You were right, Kyuubi said, holding her attack. The devil's last night would not be the first, or the last to come for me. After observing you for the night, Kyuubi's energy release ceased to end. He knew that before long, the shroud surrounding her would start to damage him. I know you aren't strong enough to help me, so you turn on me just like that? Naruto asked, despite knowing his attempt at diplomacy was futile. He had to buy time for the magical circle beneath their feet to develop. If he were too callous, she would quickly discover his plan and end him right there. Just like he said last night, every devil had their limit. Naruto would simply not survive a hit from Kyuubi at that range. Your devil piece might have saved my life, but you as a partner are useless to me. Kyuubi looked down upon him as if he were vermin. This only reinforced his belief she saw herself as better than not only himself, but all devils. Whether her dislike was extended to other species or just his own, he could not say, but as she was now, he could not talk her down. I only have one choice. Are you saying a life on the run is better than what I offered? Naruto knew that if she somehow managed to kill him, even if he were not part of the 72 pillars, she would be labeled a stray devil and hunted by more than just the enemies from last night. Devil society did not take kindly to deserters, regardless of their reason. Kyuubi's frown only seemed to deepen the farther he took the conversation. My pride was deeply wounded to have to accept help from a treacherous devil like yourself. Kurama's fist again was turned alight with fire. My mother made the mistake of trusting your kind once, and now she's gone. If there is one thing I will keep, it is my dignity. As she finished speaking, he noticed her body tense up. She swung her arm low in an attempt to finish him in one strike. If the strength behind her attack did not kill him, the white flames around her arm would. At that moment, Naruto forced the magical circle to appear beneath them. Taken by surprise, Kyuubi's attack slowed by a fraction of a second when her attention was diverted. With that time, Naruto sent them both through the portal to a place more fitting for such a fight. This is ridiculous. Naruto was forced to fight first thing in the morning, before his power had fully reawakened. He had already dodged 2 deadly attacks meant to finish him off in one hit, so he was quite awake. The worst part was, he was still stuck in his loose-fitting pajamas and not anything close to appropriate. On the other hand, he was not the one that picked the fight. Now, he and Kyuubi were deep in the mountains that surrounded the town of Ko. The last thing he needed was her to damage his apartment, and have to explain that to the human owners. The teleportation had been a bit sloppy, and was not his best work, but he had been under a considerable amount of duress. The 9 tails now stood across from him, some ways down the opposite end of the field. Once they had exited the portal together, there was a tense moment before they quickly separated from one another. Whether she had any kind of honor or not, he had no idea, but at the very least she seemed interested in seeing his capabilities as she waited for him to make the first move. You know, I really do want to have you join my family, Naruto said after a while, his voice shifting from soft to sharp as a knife's edge. But at the same time, I can't accept someone who's willing to turn on me just for their own twisted sense of pride. Kyuubi narrowed her eyes, but chose to say nothing in return. What was there left to say? She made her choice, and now it was his turn as king to put her in the proper place of queen, whether she liked it or not. A 9 tails strength is nothing to shrug off. I've got to be careful. Naruto decided that to win, he would have to go all out from the start. With Kyuubi's strength increased by a considerable multiplier with his evil piece, she would be able to resist any kind of normal magic. His only chance was to get a hold of her with his chains and absorb her energy to force her into surrender, but she already knew his capabilities from last night. First, I'll have to use something new to weaken her. Come on, boy! Kyuubi shouted over the distance. Her patience must have been wearing thin. I waited all night to see just how strong you were. Don't disappoint me. Naruto narrowed his eyes at her taunt. He wondered why she had spared him from simply killing him in his sleep. So, she wanted to see whether he was worth being a partner or not. Well, he would try not to disappoint. I'll give you a treat. Naruto began to build up his energy, so much so that it became visible around his body. No one has seen me use this before, save for my mother. Very well then. Come at me. Kyuubi accepted his strength with a smirk, readying her body for a hit. Sacred Gear. Naruto summoned into his hand a dagger of sorts, unique in that it had a 3-pronged tip. Flying Thunder God. Father, lend me your strength. Kyuubi had to admit to herself that she had not expected a devil of all things to have a sacred gear. Was he some hybrid? Or, she narrowed her eyes, did he steal such power from an unsuspecting victim? Either way, she was not one to be defeated by a simple toy like that. She had come too far to be defeated now by some brat. Every stain on her pride had to be removed before she could allow herself to forgive those that had wronged her. The only way she could go forward was to fight all of those who stood in her way. In response to the weapon summon, she drew energy to her hands and tails. With her power, 11 fireballs began to grow. Last night she had been careless in her aim, and the devils had managed to survive. She vowed not to make the same mistake twice. Take this. QB released all 11 with a single powerful throw. The blonde threw his new weapon in her direction, but her crimson eyes quickly noted that it was off course. If he had held out any hope to hit her with the dagger, he was in for a rude surprise. Not that he would find out, since her fireballs would vaporize him before his dagger even hit the ground. The harmless thing sailed over her shoulder, as she refused to even step out of the way. With her arms crossed in satisfaction, she watched the devil disappear as the fireballs erupted as one. An ear-shattering explosion rocked the battlefield as a respectable crater formed in the spot once occupied by Naruto. Humph. What a weak QB's eyes widened when she sensed his presence behind her. Before she even had time to fully turn, his fist rammed into her stomach. Not as strong as her own, but it still sent the air flying from her lungs. When he pulled back, she thought she might have a chance to recover, but his leg was sent right for her head in a daring follow-up kick. The air behind him whipped up and she knew he had enhanced his attack with demonic energy. If I don't block this, it'll be trouble. With her arms up, she met his kick's full force and felt herself sliding back along the ground. Her defense was strong enough to weather it, but she had taken a considerable amount of damage just from those 2 hits. QB could not afford for him to get close again. Not bad, there was some distance between them now, and she felt that she had a moment of respite. Somehow, he had escaped the fireball attack and managed to end up behind her. She ruled out any kind of magical circle because the calculations involved would have taken too long to get precisely behind her before the foxfire hit its mark. The only explanation was his sacred gear, the dagger that Naruto had just finished picking up from the ground where it had fallen harmlessly past her. The sacred gear allows him to teleport to that weapon's spot. He did throw it before her attack had hit. Somehow, he could instantaneously teleport using that thing. If that was the case, she would have to keep an eye on the dagger and avoid it at all costs. As long as she could predict his attack angle, then she could prepare a counter. Rather than sit idle, QB felt her best strategy was to press forward and knock him off balance. From his performance last night, she knew he was respectable with long-range magic. If she stayed too far, he could use those chains of his to sap her energy. Here I come! With a powerful kickoff, the 9-tailed fox launched herself right at her opponent. Fist reared back, she sent it right at Naruto's head as the distance between them closed in an instant. Somehow, he read her move and was able to lower his head out of the trajectory of her attack. Not one to be deterred, QB pulled back and started to send a barrage of kicks and jabs at his center mass. They would not hit as hard as if she focused all her strength into one hit, but she knew she was more likely to overwhelm his defense through speed. A pitiful spellcaster like himself would buckle eventually under her stamina. Much to her surprise, however, Naruto did not give in so easily. He kept up with her lethal dance of flesh with his own body. For every kick, he would weave his body out of the way, and for every fist he would slap it away with his own arm. Whoever taught him his defensive skills was impressive, QB had to admit. Let's see how you handle this. Her body was again covered in energy, this time supplemented with her new demonic strength, and then converted into a cloak of flames. Now, each strike carried with it fire that was sure to hit him whether it be a glancing blow or not. Understandably, he grasped the new reach of her attack and leaped back and out of range, but this time, he was too slow. From the fire around her arm, she quickly conjured another fireball and threw it at him. Now that he was in air, he would have a much more difficult time her perfectly aimed attack. The fire cloak had merely been an excuse for her to gather the necessary energy for another ranged attack, but disguise it to fool the so far cautious devil. Just as she expected him to, Naruto threw the sacred gear weapon at her again. This time, she would not allow him to get close. QB sent one of her tails out and smacked the weapon far off course to ensure he could not surprise her again. In the meantime, her fireball had reached him. Rather than teleport or defend himself with a magical circle, Naruto instead chose to slap away the ball of energy with the back of his hand. Since she had conjured it together rather fast, the attack was small enough to be pushed away by a devil with his strength level. However, her fox fire still severely burned his hand and arm as the attack was just barely diverted away. That was very foolish of you to block with your bare hand, QB snickered, how the tables had turned so quickly. You might as well consider that arm useless now. Fine, Naruto responded through gritted teeth. No matter how tough he acted though, she knew he was in pain. I only need one arm to beat you anyway. Oh? Big words. She mocked his attempt to fight back, though she had to admit she was a little excited to see what he had left to show. The power of a 9-tailed fox was not one to be underestimated, and QB had considered her victory assured since the start of the fight. The sacred gear was a surprise, but one she had already analyzed and built a counter for. His resistance had gotten her adrenaline pumping in a rare turn of events, and she knew her decision to wait to kill him had been validated considering how much fun she had toying around with him. Without that arm, his defense up close will be useless. It's over! Kyubi shouted as she surged forward. Naruto disappeared in a flash before she even made it halfway to him. She angled her head to look back at the weapon and knew he would spawn there. With practiced ease, she created another fireball on the tip of one of her tails and launched it backward. Your teleportation isn't instantaneous after all. I'll hit you right as you come out of the portal. So focused on her overwhelming victory was she that Kyubi had again underestimated Naruto. From her observation, she had only seen one facet of many that were involved with his father's sacred gear. The three-pronged weapon, affectionately recognized as a kunai by his mother, was only the vessel for the sacred gear's true power. You were right, Kyubi. Naruto appeared again, but not at the location of his sacred gear, but directly behind her. This battle is over. The fireball hit, vaporizing Naruto's kunai and the dirt and rocks surrounding it. But Naruto had not chosen to teleport to his weapon, but rather the seal he had planted on the nine-tailed fox. The true source of his sacred gear's strength was not the weapon, but the seal that Naruto could plant on anything and teleport to on a whim. I planted one on her last night when I offered the evil piece. Naruto's original intention had been to use the seal to teleport to her should she never need assistance. He had never wished to use it in this context, but he had to admit it was a well-planned move regardless. How Kyubi struggled to articulate her surprise, but was silenced as a mammon magic circle appeared between them. From the portal, Naruto's demonic energy took shape into chains and wrapped themselves around Kyubi's body. Arms pinned to her sides, Kyubi was too slow to stop the initial attack from entrapping her. Not one to give up though, he quickly felt her begin to resist his hold. Have to absorb her energy, fast. Kyubi must have felt the pull on her strength, as he forcefully ripped it from her, since her struggling only increased. With a bone-chilling roar, she released all of her feral might, and was able to free her arms. The chains were pushed away, but quickly leaped back to life and wrapped around her wrists. You really are amazing. Naruto held up his arm and focused. But there's something I forgot to tell you about this power. All around them, more magical circles appeared and released dozens of the chains. Despite her fury, even Kyubi was overwhelmed by their number. Her arms and legs found themselves being pulled apart the more she struggled. Her body began to take shape of an X as his attack literally pulled the fight from her. All the while, he continued to take away the energy she had been swinging around so brashly a moment ago. Ugh, damn you devil! With the last of her strength, she used it to curse him. Just as his mother had chosen his father and taken him and his power for her own, Naruto had given Kyubi his one evil piece without hesitation. That meant that no matter whether she liked it or not, she would be his for the rest of his days. Too bad for her, devils lived for a pretty damn long time, too. Another devil might kill you for insubordination. It would set an example, and give me another chance to find a proper servant. Naruto continued to speak and express his feelings. If Kyubi was only going to listen when she completely and utterly beaten, then he had to get his words in now. I'm not that kind of devil, and I don't want some other servant. Naruto waved the magic circles away. The chains disappeared and allowed Kyubi to topple over onto the ground. Her energy was now inside of him, free for him to do whatever he wanted with it. I want a partner. Naruto reminded her of his initial offer. I want you to join my family because you want to, not because I'm forcing you to. How did I lose? Kyubi's voice croaked out from her fatigued body. She still did not have the strength to stand, nor look at him in the eye. Still, she made her desire clear to him. You were overconfident, Naruto said with an air of finality. Whether it was the strength of your attacks, or your analysis of my technique, you were so sure of your own thoughts that you underestimated me. Kyubi scowled, a low growl building from within her throat at his words. I'll be the first to admit I am physically weaker than you. You have a stronger spiritual energy than I do, too, Naruto said with a shrug. Because of those things, I took you seriously and went all out from the start. He knew from her performance last night that she was worthy to hold the queen piece inside of her. Naruto would never argue against her ability, or strength. All he wanted was for her to accept that he too could be strong enough to be her king. I was too arrogant, huh? Kyubi reflected on her loss as he approached her. His words rang in her head over and over again, and she could only find truth in them. From the start, she had considered him nothing more than a brat, the offspring of a species she had nothing but hatred inside her heart for. And yet, because he respected her strength, he was able to overcome her power. Talk about irony. Naruto was above her now, and she struggled to lift her head. If he were to kill her, she would at least look him in the eye. That was the least she could do to keep her pride. As her end approached, Kyubi's thoughts turned to her mother. She too had met her fate to the devils, and the other kitsune and yokai had just left her to die. Kyubi had always believed that if her mother had never associated herself with the devils in the first place, she never would have been betrayed by them. Because of her feelings for one particular devil, she threw her life away and took away the only family Kyubi ever had. Now, this boy in front of her dared to ask her to join him? The stupidity of the sentiment would have made her laugh if her body had any strength left. Their eyes met as he knelt down to join her on the ground. In those blue orbs, she could not sense any killing intent. His hand fell onto her shoulder, and Kyubi could feel her energy slowly being restored. You're giving my energy back? She asked, incredulous. Of course. I just needed to take it from you long enough for you to calm down. His apparent naivety baffled Kyubi. With her strength returned, she could easily finish him off. What if I attack you again? Despite the obvious connotations of the question, her voice lacked the bite that implied she was willing to back it up with action. Then I really will kill you, Naruto said with little hesitation, forcing their eyes to meet again. I understand that I didn't make my feelings clear before, so you were unsure if I was fit to protect you. But I've said all I need to say in this little spar of ours. If you come at me again, then I know there isn't any hope for you. The faith he offered in her was astounding in that he gave her a second chance. Kyubi had to respect him all the same that this would be her last chance to get a free pass from him. If she could not finish him the next time, then he surely would finish her. To be considered family with the devil is just Kyubi was barely able to stop herself from uttering the rest of her disgust. Well, you best get used to it. You're a devil too, now. Naruto stood back up and gave her some space. The silence following his statement gave her the chance to stand on her own feet. Most of her energy had been returned to her with nothing but goodwill on his part. Kyubi could never imagine a scrawny little thing like him could be a devil capable of standing up to her, but she was wrong. Just as she was wrong about her mother's feelings, and perhaps her choices too. Maybe following this devil would give her the answers she needed. Kyubi, Naruto turned to face her, his tone serious. I can tell you're angry and restless inside from something in your past. Kyubi's shoulders locked as he seemed to read her thoughts. Was she so transparent he saw through her that fast? There is no way I can know what in your past is bothering you so much, but I promise to help you fix it, Naruto said with a fresh smile. That's what it means to be in a family, after all. The pure honesty behind his conviction brought an odd warmth to her chest. For some reason, she almost believed his words just as they were. Kyubi held herself back from completely trusting him, but she would admit his words brought her comfort. Very well, Kyubi sighed. With hands on her hips, she offered him a toothy grin. I will accept my place as your queen, Naruto. For now, at least. Her proclamation of allegiance brought out another smile. This one she could sense true happiness behind, and she had to force herself not to let his feelings spread to her. Thanks, Kyubi, Naruto said with what could only be satisfaction shining in his grin. Now let's out. Kyubi narrowed her eyes when he suddenly yelped in pain. Then she noticed that his arm was still wounded from her earlier attack. She doubted he knew any kind of healing technique, otherwise he would have fixed himself by now. For all his talk about being capable, he floundered in that aspect. Still, maybe this was her moment to be of some use. Extend your arm, she requested, positioning herself a hair's breadth away from him. Naruto looked at her carefully, obviously suspicious of her request. Do you think I'll turn on you so easily? My pride would not allow that. A growl followed her defensive statement. Of course I trust you, Naruto responded with surprising frankness. I just didn't know your healing powers could extend to healing others. Kyubi raised a brow but did not push the issue farther. You are correct. Normally it doesn't let me heal others. However, with a tender hold, she took his hand in hers and began an exchange of energy. What the Naruto was astonished as Kyubi was enveloped in a shroud of bright light that was almost enough to blind him. In the blink of an eye her body had disappeared into the light that now flowed into his arm and the rest of his body. Kyubi had used the power of the kitsune where they could possess a host body and leech their life energy. Since its creation, her species had found many other crafty uses for the ability. In this case, she could offer him a limited version of her own healing ability, by using her energy inside of him. This would be one of the many times Kyubi sensed she could be of help to her new king. In her chest, the idea of being useful to someone served to lighten her mood, if just a little bit. A bit stuffy inside here. The comment echoed across his brain, tricking his ears. Kyubi? Where are you? For a high-class devil, he was slow to catch up. I'm inside of you, boy. Think of it as a power of mine. Naruto quickly calmed himself as her healing powers began to take over. The burnt skin began to sizzle and smoke and heal itself. Within just a few minutes, his arm was returned to its original appearance before the wound had been suffered. Now that's a useful power. I can feel your energy inside me, now that you mention it. He could feel her energy course through in his chest, like water waves coursing by. And now? What's your plan? Naruto knew it was another school day and had planned to attend class. There was no need for him to keep up his appearances for the sake of sheer attendance or to understand the coursework. His only reason for being at Ko Academy was, in the end, to find more members worthy of joining his peerage. Kyubi was a great first addition, considering her strength and natural aptitude for the queen position, but his mother would need more convincing before she believed him ready to take on more evil pieces. That meant he had a lot of work to do in the form of scouting the town for potential. It was no doubt going to drag on and be a bore, but it was a necessary evil. We head for the human school. Keep an eye out for anything unique. With his business in the mountains concluded, Naruto created a magical circle beneath his feet and teleported back home. After such a workout, he needed a proper shower. Naruto, tell me more about where you're from. The woman Naruto knew as a teacher practically moaned into his ear as she sat upon his school desk. I absolutely love this blonde hair of yours. In front of him was the person that was supposed to be considered his homeroom professor, Fuka. She offered no last name, and though he found it odd at first, there were plenty of other quirks about the woman that made him turn a blind eye to such a minor detail. For example, the closeness she pushed on certain male students like himself by propping herself upon their desks and unashamedly flirting with them. Fuka-sensei, are you sure this? Naruto's eyes flicked down at his desk, where her rear sat, barely covered by a pencil skirt that came down to half her thigh. Is appropriate? The red-headed woman, that he noted was not far from his mother in sheer physical resemblance, raised a teasing brow that was soon followed by a smirk. It was rather apparent early on she cared little for the rules that had been put in place by humans to separate an authority figure like herself from the student body, but she liked to play along at times, and what he could only guess was for her own enjoyment. I don't know what you mean, Naruto-kun. The honorific came out more like a seductive purr than an actual word. I'm just enjoying a bit of a teacher's conference with my new favorite student. Naruto's robin egg eyes glanced around the room and quickly picked up on the ire of the other males. Clearly, she had offered them some capacity of the same shtick in the past, and they had grown jealous with his special attention. He wanted to believe her attention was nothing but friendly teasing, but there was something in his gut that said otherwise. This one reeks of crows. In this case, Kyubi seemed to agree. Rather, she became the voice of his gut from inside of Naruto's chest. So, she isn't normal after all. Normal was a stretch in relation to his teacher, but his meaning went farther than her personality. If Kyubi's suspicions were correct, then it meant the woman in front of him was no human. I could just eat you up. Those whisker marks are especially cute, Fuka said with a sultry tone. She had basically been on top of him since class had started. With a daring kiss on his forehead, Fuka ended her teasing early. I have something I need to take care of, so we can continue this tomorrow, Naruto-kun. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the busty female quickly wrote some instructions on the board and left them with a simple wave. Before the other boys could even bother to converge on him, Naruto was already halfway out the door. As if he were going to let her get away so easily. Let's follow her. See if anything interesting turns up. Something interesting had indeed come to fruition in Naruto's strategy to follow Fuka. Unfortunately, interesting meant conflict was inevitable this time around. Now, he had to salvage things before they got too far out of hand. Fuka had led them to a church on the outskirts of town. Not an odd sight in the town, by any means. What was odd is that she chose to not go inside but rather stay out. For a short time, it appeared as though she were almost trying to see through the building's walls themselves as she remained stock still. Then, she was enveloped in a flood of light not unlike Kyubi when she entered his body. When Fuka emerged again, her business attire from school had disappeared to make way for a kind of skimpy armor. Made of black ebony with gold-encrusted edges, the solid material barely covered her and groin but also acted as extended gloves and boots for her arms and legs. Most telling of all were Fuka's raven pair of wings that softly fluttered behind her back. A fallen angel, huh? Her forward approach to speaking with the schoolboys was starting to make more sense. Fallen angels were known for being seductive, and that went for either gender. They were also well known for making servants out of those that fell in love with their looks, similar to succubi. Oh boys, Fuka cooed, waving toward the church. I have a proposition for you. Come out and play with me. What an annoying Sal. Kyubi was clearly not amused at her cutesy tone, and Naruto had to admit that it grated against his ears as well. Beneath that playful demeanor, however, Naruto was sure he had sensed something else. Those eyes of hers burned with purpose. Not long after Fuka began her cat calls did a few men in robes emerge from the large wooden doors. Anyone could see from their eyes that they were entranced by her looks. With but a simple motion of the finger, she had them approach her without any hesitation. Naruto grimaced. Men of the church were quite weak. Fallen angels and the servants of God never get along. Is she trying to tempt them? Before she could welcome the entranced young men into her arms, a spear of light came crashing down from the sky. It embedded itself into the ground near the priests, and proceeded to explode into a bright light. The blast released a heavy amount of energy, and Naruto was forced to shield his eyes. The human's life forces were extinguished in the blast that stopped just short of hitting Fuka. Fuka looked somewhat disappointed as the energy died down. Something told Naruto that she had been expecting such a thing to happen, given her rather relaxed stance. Her violet eyes shifted to the sky above to greet the two shadowy figures with the sun at their backs. Welcome, Tenshi-san. Her overly friendly greeting was followed by a wave. Then, Naruto noticed her eyes narrow into something he akin to dangerous. I was wondering whether you would join me or not. Her voice changed. Kyubi noticed the shift in attitude as well. Fuka's mask had been lifted to reveal her true nature. Her mission all along had not been to convert some weak-hearted priests, but to lure out these angels. Without a doubt, turning an angel was a much greater prize than simply acquiring some servants. Quiet yourself, fallen scum, said the male angel, a young man in a simple white robe. His short black hair and piercing eyes gave him a handsome, yet oddly intimidating visage. We have come to offer you God's forgiveness, fallen-san. The woman spoke up next, her long pink hair flowing down her back. She seemed rather soft and frail, more fitting of what Naruto had expected to see in an angel. Oh? Is that so? If Fuka were concerned, she did not show it well. She shrugged, offering her arms out in mock surrender. Then, come and get me. In the arms of the male angel, a golden sword of light was crafted from nothingness. With his compatriot armed in turn with a purple bow and arrow of light, the pair were ready to take the fight to the fallen. Fuka, on the other hand, did not bother to arm herself with a weapon. Instead, she simply stood there waiting for them to validate their promise. Prepare yourself. The male angel impatiently swooped down toward Fuka. Sasuke-kun, wait! His companion shouted after him, but there was no talking to him now. Now that's more like it, Fuka said with a playful smirk. With an outstretched arm, she summoned a long spear of light, colored pink, and used her wings to meet Sasuke in the sky. The weapons hit one another with a spark of energy between them as the energies fought against one another. Despite falling from heaven, the unforgiven angels were still fully capable of replicating and using the same light energy as God's servants. For all intents and purposes, the two of them were evenly matched in the quality of their weapons, so what mattered was the individual skill. Fuka and Sasuke separated, only to have their weapons meet again and again in the sky as the two collided against each other. With their close proximity to one another, the archer angel was unable to support her friend. Rather clever of his teacher, thought Naruto. Damn you! Sasuke grunted as he forced all of his strength behind his sword strike. Getting annoyed, Tenchi-san? Fuka whispered back, into Sasuke's ear. Her smirk only served to annoy him more. Take this. In his other hand, Sasuke spawned another sword and swung at Fuka's blind spot. The attack broke through Fuka's defense, and seemed as if it hit. She grunted in pain and forced herself to drop to the ground. Sasuke was relentless though, and flew down to strike her with all of his might. That was when Naruto noticed his teacher's strained breathing turn back to normal. She was smiling of all things as someone was seconds from killing her. The angel's wings, they are switching, Kyubi said, unable to hide her astonishment. The kitsune was right. Sasuke's wings were flickering back and forth between black and white. Rather than tempt him through lust, it seemed Fuka would take him through fury. Not just Sasuke, but his compatriot seemed to be losing her will as well. She had not fired a single arrow, and yet her wings were changing too. He noticed in her eyes that she bore great concern for the man she was paired with, and Naruto realized her affection and concern was borderline lust in itself. If he fell, she would too. Just as Sasuke's blade came down upon her head, Fuka shifted her body out of the way. His body extended past her as he lost balance. Her hand went out and wrapped around his sword hand, twisting the wrist and eliciting a pained cry from the angel. Not one to show remorse, Fuka sent a bone-crushing elbow strike into Sasuke's cheek. The force of the blow sent Sasuke flying backward against the ground. He stopped just a few feet from the entrance of the church building. From the ground, his pure wings were now tarnished with dirt. Though, they were not to be pure for long unless he calmed himself. How dare you! The female angel fired one of her own arrows at Fuka while Sasuke struggled to regain his footage. With a twist of her spear, the purple arrow of light was smashed into nothingness. The attack was weak, even for an angel. Despite Fuka's lack of concern, the archer seemed ready to fire again when Sasuke held his hand up. Enough, Sakura, he brushed his bruised cheek, wincing at the pain. Despite his act, the wounded angel was clearly out of breath and far too wounded to continue. She's just trying to tempt us. We'll retreat for now. Sasuke-kun, the woman named Sakura, had a face full of regret, as if she knew she held her friend back. Not long after that, the angels did indeed fly back into the sky. Fuka let them go with no trouble, though she did offer the male angel a final wink for a goodbye. Well, that was fun, Fuka said before turning toward Naruto's hiding spot in the nearby bushes. Naruto-kun, you can come out now. Naruto was not sure whether he should be impressed at her ability to detect him, or embarrassed at his lack of grace. Still, he was happy to note that Fuka had not returned to her playful personality. She actually addressed him without any kind of emphasis or sexual undertone. Maybe he could have a normal conversation with her for once. That was very impressive, Fuka-sensei. Naruto offered her a compliment right off the bat. The fact was, his words were simply taken from his heart. No doubt, she was the clear victor of the match. In the end, all she did with the angels was play fight with them. You still call me sensei, even after all that. Fuka blushed a bit as her wings fluttered behind her. Just because you're a fallen angel doesn't mean you aren't still my teacher at school, right? He added with a playful smile, one of which she quickly offered in return. That's why I like you, Naruto-kun. Clever and handsome. Fuka approached him with nothing but elegance as each step in her armored heels was carefully taken and meant to accentuate her womanly features. From inside of his chest, Kyubi's energy surged out of his body and covered the area between them in light. A few moments later, Kyubi emerged and held her arms up as if to attack. She had no qualms about fighting Fuka, whether or not Naruto saw her as a friend or foe. The fallen angel, to her credit, merely narrowed her eyes to cautiously gaze upon the new arrival. Her arrival, while surely unexpected, was not enough to intimidate someone who Naruto had quickly begun to consider a veteran at combat. Interesting, Fuka whispered, a gloved finger touching her chin in silent thought. Your pet? She asked with a teasing smile. Kyubi, however, was not so amused by the label. Her energy flared to dangerous levels, enough for even Fuka to lose the attitude. Come on, so the kitsune threatened her with more than just words if the key release was anything to go by. Kyubi, calm down. Naruto stood at his queen's side in an attempt to stop her. She's just some fallen whore. Let me finish her. Kyubi continued to protest, despite Naruto's objection. Fuka did not flinch at her choice at colorful vocabulary, but Naruto did feel the energy of the fallen woman start to increase in a similarly threatening manner. I'd like to speak with her. She's been here longer than the both of us. Naruto offered his explanation as his eyes flicked back to his teacher. Perhaps she can fill us in on the talent in this city. The fallen angel's soft lips thinned in response to his hidden appeal. No doubt she was considering whether or not to help people who were essentially her enemies. Naruto was not about to appear as some pushover like those angels though, and if he got even the inkling she would hide something useful, he would not hesitate to fight. Fine then. Fuka's hands gravitated to her shapely hips as her mood began to brighten. It's the least I can do for the little devil I plan to add to my harem. Plan? Naruto raised a brow in response to her choice of words. Fuka offered him nothing but a suggestive wink. You may find it interesting to note that the rumor mill says a dragon-type sacred gear has been detected around town. This is fairly recent, within the last week or so. The morsel Fuka offered was more than appetizing for Naruto. A dragon-type sacred gear? Now that is interesting. Dragons were some of the most powerful beings in all the world. They were fairly rare as well, though Naruto understood devils in particular had them most often as acquaintances of some kind. Sacred gears related to them ranged from incredibly common to some of the most rare and powerful sacred gears in the world. The chance for mediocrity was outweighed for the opportunity of greater power than Naruto could ever imagine. I don't suppose you would know where to find it? Naruto asked, though he doubted it. Even if she did know, why would she tell him? Fuka clearly had her own agenda and entertaining his wish was merely a whim on her part, or a part of her own plans. I'm afraid I don't, Fuka shrugged, though she did not seem particularly apologetic. Humph. As useless as I suspected. Kyubi grunted, her arms crossed in contempt. Such toys are not my concern, after all, Fuka said, hinting at her own agenda. I wonder what is your concern? If not sacred gears, then what purpose do you have here? I'll take my leave now, Naruto-kun. See you in class tomorrow. Naruto and Kyubi watched as the fallen angel flew off into the sky and disappeared. They were no closer to finding a person of interest, but at the very least he could successfully claim the town had something worth investigating over. His mother would be interested in learning that tidbit of information. If the dragon-type gear was as powerful as the rumors seemed to make it out to be, the user would not stay hidden for long. Then Naruto would swoop in and take them for himself. Come on, Kyubi. Let's. A distant rumble signaled an explosion of some kind had gone off. Both of them turned in the direction they had sensed the release of energy from, and quickly grasped it was inhuman in origin. Since it was in the opposite direction Fuka went, it could only be someone, or something, else. Let's go investigate. Naruto prepped his wings and bid her to follow him. He took off into the sky full of intrigue over what could be going on in the direction of the setting sun. Kyubi grumbled for a moment before she too sprouted the thin leather wings on her back. Naruto narrowed his eyes as they approached the location he felt the energy of the blast release from. It was a park of some sort, but from the sky it was empty. He quickly detected foul play as a type of barrier had been erected. Another barrier, Kyubi whispered, as she no doubt remembered her own experience. Yep, and this one isn't going to stop me either. Naruto prepared to break through, but hesitated. When he tried to touch the barrier, his hands simply slipped through. Whoever made the barrier must have only made it to keep humans out and unaware, since there was no resistance to his attempt to enter. If that were the case, then he might actually be able to sneak inside. He led Kyubi back down to the ground, near a small cluster of trees that he knew he could hide in after entering through the obstructing magic. With his feet on the ground, he again pushed his arm through to test that the barrier was still harmless. Good enough for me. Naruto entered through with Kyubi close behind. Now on the other side, he detected a slew of new presences, all of them considerably powerful in their own right. They were all together in the center of the park, just a little bit ahead. He crept forward and used the plants surrounding him for cover. If he could avoid conflict like he did with Fuka and the angels, he would at least try to stay out of sight. It was not long before they were on the hill overlooking the park center. In the middle, the white cobblestone walking area surrounded a large fountain of sorts that sprayed water into the sky. That seemed to be the site of the disturbance, as he saw the still smoking crater and scattered rubble around. The first one he noticed was another fallen angel, hovering above the fountain. A brunette, she similarly wore a skimpy outfit made of leather, and not unlike Fuka's choice of attire. Unlike his teacher, this woman lacked any kind of play or compassion behind those dark eyes of hers, a true member of the fallen, twisted with her own desires. Below her were some faces he actually recognized. The redhead that had observed him enter the school was there, someone he had come to find went by the name Rias. She was the talk of the student body, who knew her as one of the academy's two great ladies. Her beauty was only matched by her smarts, from what the rumors said at least. Well, she is rather pretty. Naruto's honest feelings came into play as he could not help but stare a bit. His eyes naturally drifted to the girl standing next to her who wore a traditional shrine maiden outfit. Though she was out of school uniform, he quickly recognized her as the second of the great ladies, Akeno Himejima. Once again, her beauty was considered second only to Rias by the boys of the school. Apparently, she was quite the sadist if the rumors were to be taken for truth. The rest were an odd assortment of second years that were in one way or another well known: Kiba Yuto, the pretty boy, and Kaneko Tuju, the cute junior. There were two others that were in the back, as it seemed the other four were protecting them. One he recognized from simple passing in the halls, Aika Kiryu, another second year that was apparently a well-known woman pervert. The other one, though, Naruto had never met before. She had on the robes of a nun, and her blonde hair signaled that she was a foreigner of some kind. Why a bunch of devils would protect a sister nun made little sense to him, though. Aika was holding her rather protectively, though. I suppose you recognize them? Kyubi asked in a low voice. Yeah, for the most part. A bunch of devils, but I don't know why they are protecting that sister. Perhaps we can glean something from the conversation, Kyubi suggested, and the two struggled to listen into the ongoing dialogue. I'll say it again. Don't touch my cute subordinates, Fallen Angel-san, said Rias with her lips twisted in a threatening grin. No matter her line, she delivered them like a true princess with a soft yet domineering tone. Rainier, said the Fallen Angel in response. She was not particularly concerned, despite being surrounded by hostile devils. I've simply come to recover what is mine. If you kept your subordinates' filthy hands off, then I would not need to burn them with light. The Fallen Angel lowered herself to the ground. Her proximity caused the others beside Rias to tense up, but the Gremry girl held up a hand for them to pause. Undaunted, Rainier waved for the nun to come to her waiting arms. Aika seemed particularly reluctant to let her go. The two shared a few words that Naruto could not make out, but the blonde girl seemed to want to go with the Fallen Angel. One look from Rias was enough for Aika to let up, reluctantly. Good girl, Rainier petted the nun, but the little girl did not seem happy at all. Goodbye, devils. The raven wings encased them both and a powerful energy emerged. In a flash of light, the two disappeared with no trace except for a few fallen feathers left on the ground. Naruto contemplated whether or not he should take his leave now before Rias and the others notice him. Considering the fact they were both devils, he felt it was only a matter of time before they had to meet. Perhaps it would be to his advantage to force an introduction in the aftermath of this emotional event. Kyubi, follow me, Naruto muttered as he chose to stand to full height. She narrowed her eyes, but dutifully followed in his stead. Together, they made their way down to join the conglomeration of devils as they had gathered around Aika. Without any attempt to hide their presence, Rias and her subordinates quickly took notice and turned to face them. Kiba and Kaneko quickly stopped Naruto's forward progress by standing in front of the others in a protective manner. Akeno and Rias stayed in the back with Aika, but neither seemed particularly put off by his presence there. Friend or foe? Kiba asked with a sharp tone. Naruto pocketed his hands and shrugged. He had no desire to fight them, but he was not about to be intimidated by one of the Gremry's peerage. Neither. I was passing by and noticed you had gotten yourselves into some trouble. Naruto smiled, though it was rather hollow. Figured I'd stay and watch the show. It's nice to see you again, Naruto-kun. Rias greeted with surprising familiarity. Her words even served to unnerve some members of her family. If I may call you that, Naruto-kun? The smile she offered in return was loaded with something other than goodwill. She was playing him the same he did with Kiba. This woman, I like her. Sure, Rias-chan, Naruto offered the same familiarity in return. Only fitting if two high-class devils greet one another like such, right? To her credit, Rias did not so much as flinch at his teasing. Akeno, the raven-haired beauty Naruto quickly identified as Rias' queen, did offer a small giggle in return. High class? Yuto asked, unsure. Yes, Yuto. Rias motioned toward Naruto and Kyubi. The man you see before you has a king piece, like me. The 9 tails next to him is a fellow queen, I see. Fu, how interesting, Akeno said with no small amount of glee. Kyubi leveled her glare at Akeno as a familiar scent of challenge wafted in the air. As interesting as it would be to see the two spar, Naruto wanted to avoid conflict if he could. I figured that we should introduce ourselves. Despite us both being third years, we have separate classes, Naruto said. That we do. An interesting olive branch you offer. Ria's smile faltered as she glanced toward Aika, who was still sulking over Asia's leave. Your timing could be better though. Maybe I could help. The Crimson Princess raised a suspicious brow as Naruto shrugged again. Devils should stick together, right? I can at least listen to your problem. Given a moment to think, Ria's expression quickly shifted from one of conflict to satisfied. With a genuine smile, she beckoned Naruto to join them. He passed Kiba and Kaneko without conflict, though Kyubi offered them a hearty glare. If you don't mind, I'd rather talk someplace more comfortable. The old school building acts as our clubhouse, so would you mind following us there? Rias explained as a red magical circle with the Gremry crest appeared at their feet. Naruto returned her smile with one of his own. I'd love to. Akeno motioned for Naruto and Kyubi to sit at one of the Baroque couches that surrounded the coffee table in the middle of the darkened room. The antique style sort of reminded him of home and he soon felt rather comfortable in the room. Kyubi did not like the idea of cavorting with people she considered strangers, but she sat her well-shaped behind the cushion all the same. Given the nice decor, Naruto found himself turning his head back and forth in an effort to see more of what the place had to offer. Night was well upon them after they arrived at the clubhouse, so Yuto lit a few antique oil lamps that washed the room in a warm tone. Fortunately, Devils could see perfectly fine in the dark, so the most they did was offer a comfortable ambience to their coming conversation. Rias sat down herself at the oak desk found near the head of the room. Next to it was a booth that Naruto could only guess was a dressing room of some kind. Yuto, Kaneko, and Aika all three sat down on the Victorian-style couch across from Naruto. Given their cautious stares, none of them particularly trusted Naruto yet. He could not blame them, since he in turn failed to trust Rias. The nature of devils, he supposed. Here you are, Naruto-san. My own blend of tea. From behind him, Akeno returned with a silver platter of china plates and cups filled to the brim with the tasty liquid. With perfect manners, the queen offered Naruto a cup without him even having to ask. Bewildered by her kindness, Naruto accepted the offering with a mumbled thanks. When the drink was given to Kyubi, she fared little better. As expected, she hastily took the cup and plate from Akeno's grasp and offered her an ungrateful glare. All the same, Rias' queen continued to wear such an innocent smile. She is a little too happy, I think. From his observation, it was more of a challenge to make Akeno frown than it was to smile. That happiness of hers had to stem from somewhere deep. He wondered if it was another facade, though. If she were a reincarnated devil, she must have her own sordid past to share like the rest of them. I hope you enjoy it. Akeno takes great pride in caring for us with such refreshments, Rias said, mirth rising in her tone. Naruto raised the drink to his lips as he observed them. The way they smiled and laughed truly did feel like a family more than a group of servants with their master. He quickly realized that he was feeling envious of Rias and the group she had gathered. A quick glance to his side revealed Kyubi to be absorbed in her own thoughts, ignoring the light and joyful atmosphere. He fruitlessly wondered if he would ever obtain what Rias' grimoire had. It's delicious, the words slipped from his mouth as his tongue registered the sweet taste. You are as talented as you are beautiful, Akeno-san. Akeno brought a hand to her cheek as a light blush overcame her well-composed features. She offered a slight giggle, but it took a moment before she could muster herself to say anything. You are too kind, Naruto-san. Rias raised a brow but simply continued to watch the interaction between her queen and fellow king. She could barely hide her amusement as Akeno bashfully agreed to Naruto's request. Shall we move on to introductions then? Rias offered after the group had begun to settle down. Given her silence, she intended for Naruto to go first. Well, since I offered, I suppose it's only right to go first, Naruto said with a shrug. I'm Naruto Mammon, and this is my queen, Kyubi. She is a nine-tailed fox, as you can plainly see. He motioned toward himself and then Kyubi, with her red tails uncomfortably pressed against the couch behind her. Naruto figured Kyubi would not want to say anything to him, and his assumption remained correct. The kitsune remained quiet and simply acknowledged his introduction with a nod. Despite her rudeness, the others accepted his introduction all the same. Mammon, the name sounds familiar, Rias muttered. Naruto easily picked up on her idle thoughts and found it interesting she knew. Whatever information she had must have been from a considerably aged history book, since the Mammon had not been around in mainstream devil society for quite some time. Given her status, perhaps Naruto should not have been surprised the heiress was well educated in her history. While Rias no doubt racked her brain to remember, Naruto entertained the others by listening to their introductions. They offered nothing new to him, though he supposed it was best Kyubi remember their names. The time further introductions offered must have been enough, as Naruto noticed Rias' eyes popped with what could only be an answer to her own question. I remember now. My brother spoke some about you when I inquired, Rias recounted from what must have been a recent talk with her brother. Naruto knew nothing of the Gremry family, but he assumed her brother was something of a knowledgeable man. He recognized you after I described your family crest. The swirl pattern is rather simple thing to remember. And did what he tell you surprise you? Naruto asked, slightly amused. Rias glowered at his teasing but continued on regardless. Apparently, there really was once a fifth Mao who held the name Mammon. One of the original Satans, with a moniker that made him well associated with greed. He attempted to usurp power when the other four Mao went to war with God during the Great War. Around the table, the face of shock was rather common. Not even Kyubi could hide her interest. Naruto remained tight-lipped as he listened to her recount his family's history with simplified yet relatively accurate detail. After great sacrifice, the Mao was defeated and his clan swept away to the edges of the world. Even my brother, Surzex Lucifer-sama, was taken aback to discover some still lived. Naruto's eyes betrayed him as he discovered Ria's family connection to one of the current Mao. Given her natural prowess, the family relation only made sense. Still, it just went to show how out of touch he and his mother were from the rest of the underworld. We have experienced our share of hardship, Naruto professed, taking another sip of tea while wearing bitter eyes. But we are alive. I swore to my mother I would return the Mammon to the 72 pillars, and when the Mammon set their sights on something, we don't give up. Quite a fine saying, albeit for an almost extinct house, Rias said with little sympathy in her tone. Her eyes narrowed on Naruto, though she kept the same smile. I hope you don't plan to cause me trouble, Naruto-kun. I'd rather not have to end your dream by force. Humph. Naruto ignored her threat with a stubborn grunt. I have to admit I am jealous of you, Rias-chan. Oh? Why is that? She inquired, her interest piqued. This family you have here, Creating something like it for myself is another desire of mine, he said, setting the tea back down onto the table. Their gazes crossed as Naruto stood his ground. For that dream to become reality, I've come here to cook to find my peerage. I'll develop a family I can take care of and trust, just the same as you did. The strength behind Naruto's conviction seemed to humble Rias, as she offered no further retort. The rest of them also appeared rather convinced. After that, I'll return to the Underworld and petition for my family to return to the Pillars and earn our old territory. Naruto's voice dropped as he said that. He had reiterated his mother's words, but he knew they were naive to think things would go so easily. Rias too must have grasped the same thought as she began to frown. That might not be so easy, Naruto-kun. Your clan has been gone for too long, and I highly doubt anyone would cede their land back to you over such an old claim. Her voice was at least somewhat sympathetic that time. Still, his determination was not so easily lost. I'll find a way, was all he offered in return. I admire your dedication, something of a trademark for the mammon I'm starting to pick up on. Rias' grin began to lose its luster soon after. However, you will need to be a bit more clever than that if you wish to return to the rest of Devil Society. Otherwise, you'll be ripped apart by their schemes. No one would want the mammon to repeat their conquest a second time, right? Akeno added in a somber tone, her smile lost as well. Naruto could offer nothing in return as the simple fact was that Rias had a point. He would need to get stronger, both mentally and physically, if he wanted to see both his mother's and his own dreams come true. That was something he had chosen to accept long ago, but hearing it from others made him feel even less secure. For now, at least, you and I have no issues with one another. Rias' smile returned and with it, an offering of peace. That much means you are welcome to visit us here anytime, and I'd like to encourage you to do so at your leisure. That's quite the offer, Naruto said. Well, if you want your dreams to succeed you will need some devil acquaintances. If you would like, it would be my pleasure to be your first. There was a certain shine to her eye Naruto could only attribute to some hidden agenda. For now though, there was no reason to refuse. I might take you up on that then. With that, the two groups of devils offered a series of short goodbyes and parted ways. Both had learned something about each other, and they were all one step closer to their own goals and desires. You seem to have enjoyed yourself, Akeno, Rias said with no small amount of teasing laced in her voice. With Naruto Mammon now gone, Rias dismissed her own group to go home. They were kept late enough as it was, and she appreciated their hard work. Of course, as Rias' queen, Akeno remained behind to dutifully attend to the president and apparently suffer from a bit of womanly torment. Akeno, however, betrayed nothing as she still continued to smile. She must have thought of something nice as she soon began to blush again. Come now, Rias. You have to admit he was rather handsome, despite his boyish looks. Akeno's smile seemed to widen as she reminisced. So, even Akeno found something she liked. I have to admit to no such thing, Rias said with a hint of mock pride, though a giggle from deep within betrayed her anxiousness. Under Akeno's scrutinizing gaze, Rias finally broke with a small blush of her own. Fine, the Crimson Princess admitted with an overly harsh tone. I did find his whisker marks to be kind of cute. Foo, so even Rias Akeno's unfinished statement was enough to fluster the other young woman. Enough already? In the depths of the underworld, Naruto and his queen Kyubi emerged from within a magical circle. Bathed in crimson light they stepped out of the portal and confirmed their surroundings as correct. Nostalgia hit Naruto as the feeling of home had finally returned and put his heart at ease. They were inside of the Mammon Castle, located in the far reaches of Devil territory. Naruto had come home, but not for a social call. There was business to deal with if his work in the human realm were to continue. Just as his mother had expected, Ko was a fruitful place to find those with power. Armed with the knowledge he received from Rias and Fuka, Naruto had all the proof he needed to show his mother that he was ready to take on the full responsibility of a king. So, this is the Underworld. Kyubi's nose twitched in discomfort. She naturally gravitated toward him in the center of the dark cobblestone-laden hallway. Around them were all manner of medieval decorations, with a blood-red carpet at their feet. In front of them was the throne room where his mother spent most of her time. An infant could sense the great demonic energy on the other side of the large iron doors, and he knew Kushina was waiting for him inside. With Kyubi tagging along, it was sure to be an interesting reunion. Come on, Kyubi. My mother does not like to be kept waiting, Naruto said. He began to walk toward the doors with purpose in his step. Now in front of the door, Naruto took hold of both handles. With one motion he forced both of the heavy-set doors to open at once. He did not hesitate to show himself inside and Kyubi dutifully followed behind. Since she had already informed him that it was her first time in the Devil's homeland, Naruto was not surprised to see the kitsune's eyes wandering about the room. He only hoped that she remembered to show the proper respect to his mother. As loving as Kushina was, she would not forgive Kyubi for insolence. The Nine-Tails' pride was easily dwarfed by his mother's. My son, you have returned. Kushina sat upon her spiked throne and was clearly elated at his arrival, welcoming them with a smile. Just as she was when he left, his mother chose to remain nude in the confines of her chambers. That was something of a common occurrence with her, though he could only fathom where she nurtured the habit from. Mother. Her beauty was unlike anything Naruto had ever encountered before. After going to the human world and seeing countless women and admiring their bodies, so few had compared to Kushina. Perhaps what had drawn him to those he was closest to was how their beauty had come to match the same level as his mother. Mother, thank you? Naruto bowed his head. Oh? Kushina's eyes flickered past her son to meet the curious gaze of Kyubi. Her violet orbs shined with what almost seemed like familiarity. Who have you brought before me? She is quite beautiful. Naruto stood to full height and sidestepped so that Kyubi was now directly in front of his mother. The two of them were now able to fully look upon one another. Mother, this is my queen. Her name is Kyubi, and she is one of the Kitsune Yukai, he said, motioning toward the young woman at his side. Kushina rose from her throne, dark hair ruffling from behind her back. With careful steps, she descended from the raised dais to join them. She seemed rather interested in Kyubi and approached the Nine Tails first. Naruto was amazed to see Kyubi's natural resistance disappear under his mother's imperious gaze. The 9 tails behind her lowered in what he could only guess was deference. If one met Kushina and felt her natural demonic aura for the first time, he supposed anyone would be humbled. So far, he had yet to meet anyone on the same level. Not even one of the powerful Yukai like Kyubi could match, though his queen could find contentment in a respectable second place. Supple, pure skin, Kushina mumbled to herself as one of her hands held itself against Kyubi's cheek. A strong spiritual energy, too. Kushina's touch shifted from Kyubi's face to her arms and chest. The physical contact was not sexual, but purely objective in its exploratory function. His mother's experience allowed her to see so much about them with simple interactions. Your muscles are well developed, and I can sense a great fire inside of you, Kushina observed with a grin. After a moment, her eyes narrowed. You have seen much battle, haven't you? Why? A hint of Kyubi's usual gruff tone came out before she stopped herself and attempted to lower her tone. Yes, I have. Kushina's eyes drifted back to Kyubi's face. She lightly traced the crimson-red patterns on the half-devil's cheeks with a far-off look in her eye. These marks, did you choose them yourself? Kushina asked. Naruto raised a brow at her question as he failed to see the relevance. Though, he admitted that he too had an interest in whether the two whisker-like marks meant anything. Kyubi was the first kitsune he had ever met, and so he knew very little of their culture, or even what one looked like. He noticed Kyubi's eyes narrow a fraction more than they had been before. The inklings of a frown began to show as she struggled to find a proper answer to the question. They were my mother's, said the kitsune, after a considerable pause. Kushina's eyes widened a bit when she heard that, but the conniving smile failed to be lost from her lips. Somehow, it was as if his mother had been expecting that answer. I see, how interesting. Kushina offered no further input, satisfied with her response. Naruto's mother then turned to him, and he too struggled to maintain himself under her gaze. With her hand, she took hold of his chin and gently pushed him to look left, and then right. Then, she traveled lower and hovered the dainty digits above his covered pectorals, then to his abs. There is a new strength in you, my child. A piece of your queen's energy now rests within you. Naruto found himself lost for words as his mother took both of his hands into her own. I knew sending you to Ko was the best course. Before he could will himself to respond, Kushina pressed her lips to his forehead. Heat rushed to his cheeks as Naruto unashamedly began to blush from her attention. He found himself suffering in silent agony as she pulled away. His eyes could not tear themselves away as her lips returned to their usual devilish curvature. You chose well, Naruto, Kushina said to him, pride oozing from her tone. Kushina turned to Kyubi and beckoned her to come closer. His mother forced their hands together as she gazed upon both of them. Together you both have the strength to carve a future out for the mammon. Your partnership is fate, I think. Kushina carefully removed herself to stand a few paces away. Her eyes lingered on them a moment longer before she started to climb back up to her throne. Naruto and Kyubi remained together for an awkward moment before they retracted their hands from one another. Neither could help the blood that rushed to their faces in embarrassment. But Kushina continued, now looking down upon them. You are but two devils. For the mammon to return, you must build a full peerage to hope to equal the strength of the 72 pillars. Naruto narrowed his eyes as they finally reached the crux of the matter, and the reason he had come home: evil pieces. His mother had only offered him the king and mutation piece in order to test his resolve and determine whether he truly was capable of continuing down this path. With her approval of Kyubi and his own strength, Naruto had confidence his mother would give him the tools needed to continue. I believe it's time you take on the full set. From behind her throne, Kushina retrieved a small wooden case. With great care she held the box from underneath with one hand and then opened it with the other. Naruto ascended the few steps and joined his mother. Within the small container, cushioned in a red velvet mat, were the remaining evil pieces to his set. The glass-like chess pieces reflected the azure light that flooded in through the window, offering a brilliant shine that only enhanced the beauty they had in his eyes. 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights, and 8 pawns. All mine. Take them, Kushina insisted, pushing the box toward him. They are yours now, my love. Naruto extended his arm above the pieces. With his demonic energy, he began to absorb the pieces so that they could rest inside him until he could find each a proper host. With this, you truly are a king. Kushina set the now empty case aside. Her hand brushed against the side of his head, cradling him by the ear. There was a sense of admiration behind that gaze of hers. I won't fail you, Naruto pledged, his body aflame with new vigor. Kushina's devilish smile grew wider. I know. Kyubi remained quiet as Naruto and Kushina said their goodbyes to one another. Once he received the evil pieces, Naruto had offered his mother a short explanation of the situation in Ko and how he would be able to put her gift to good use. The woman had been ecstatic, of course, and praised her hard-working child. Despite the Nine-Tails' careful observation, the red-headed matriarch was still a mystery she struggled to unravel. As a nine-tailed fox, Kyubi had great pride in remaining independent and untouchable. Still, she could sense great strength within the devil woman that rivaled her own power. Rather than make things difficult between herself and Naruto for a second time, Kyubi had duly allowed his mother to do as she wished. And yet, to entertain a whim of her own, Kyubi had made use of her own senjutsu prowess to further examine Kushina's aura. What she found had almost robbed her of the ability to speak. She had struggled to answer as the woman spoke to her, and she fought to recognize the darkness that had twisted itself around Kushina's energy. Out of respect for Naruto, she chose to remain silent on such matters. Perhaps he knew, or rather, chose to deny the existence of the darkness. Kyubi could see past the devil's motherly exterior because her own mother hid her feelings similarly. The energy inside of Kushina was no different than that of the devils who pursued Kyubi. Only time would tell if the devils in front of her would shift from friend to foe. Independent as she was, Kyubi dearly hoped that her presumption was wrong. To have to kill Naruto's mother is a thought even I would rather not entertain. Naruto shoveled past another drunk festival goer, and was forced to crinkle his nose in disgust. He was starting to wish he had chosen to take the flying route. Now that he was literally in the thick of the festival events, he had no choice but to continue to travel down the crowded street, flanked with food and game stalls. Now that his mother had gifted him with a full set of evil pieces, Naruto considered his work to expand his peerage now came to the forefront of everything. He chose to accelerate his plans and forcefully immerse himself into large gatherings, like festivals and other town events, to better expose himself to the human population in hopes of finding someone special. He should have known after Kyubi refused to follow him that things would not go as planned. The nine-tailed fox instead offered to use her senjutsu talents to help him search, but as far away from town as possible. Her excuse was that to meditate, she needed absolutely no distraction, but he had a feeling it was to get out of situations like Naruto found himself suffering in now. Whatever. I'll just have to be the one to find someone first. Somehow, he would salvage his own wrecked sense of pride from the gutter. Unfortunately, he had barely caught a whiff of any potential sacred gear users. Perhaps he was going about this strategy all wrong. He would have to ask Rias of her own opinion. Humbling himself to another devil for advice was not his idea of fun, and Kushina would surely scold him, but he could not afford to fail. The inklings of a powerful aura woke him from his wandering thoughts. His head turned on a swivel back in the direction of a few stalls that were selling all kinds of food and drink. More and more people crossed his vision and lightly pushed against his body as he struggled against the crowd. Whatever released that energy had disappeared off the face of the earth, much to his disappointment. Next, his exasperated expression told everything he was feeling without a person even having to ask. Appropriately, people began to avoid him as he continued his walk of shame down the road. Inside one of the many stalls, a young-looking woman sat enjoying a blend of the local sake. Underneath the dark nun shroud, a hint of straw blonde hair could be noticed. The rest of her attire was rather loose and said little of her figure, as appropriately modest of a member of the church. Around her neck hung a silver crucifix, which she was caressing with unusual strength. Unbeknownst to the people around her, she had noticed the devil boy walking past and released a sharp amount of killing intent by accident. Outside of give some people a shiver down the spine, she had gone largely unnoticed. The demon was a bit smarter and picked up on her location, but was forced to leave after the nun had managed to calm herself. It was a silly mistake of hers to make, considering how many devils she had already managed to kill. Most of them could never sense her unless she let them. Perhaps age was starting to affect her skill. Her hazel eyes flicked back to the vendor in front of her, as he seemed ready to offer her another cup. As much as she loved to drown her sorrows in alcohol, there was something she had to go do now. With a simple wave, she dismissed him and pulled some money from within her cloak. If any found it odd that a religious woman were drinking, no one dared to speak it. She rose from her seat and wordlessly exited the stall. Her black boots began to carry her down the road down in a similar path the devil had taken. You won't get away so easily, kid. There was still a large debt she had to repay to Devil Kind. He would be one of the countless tallies she added to the back of her head, and she would not rest until that tab of hers was paid in kind. After following up on a few false alarms, Naruto had largely escaped from the crowd and found himself again wandering the empty streets of suburban Ko. Since it was a school day in addition to the spring festival, he was not surprised to find himself largely alone. He would have to meet up with Kyubi empty-handed, it would seem. Naruto grimaced as he thought about the condescending look Kyubi was sure to give him. She always had something to say when he failed. It was generally followed up by her relaying to him her own success, which acted as a thinly veiled boasting game, one of which he always lost. In this case, I wouldn't mind if she won this little competition. Expanding his peerage went farther than some simple contest of pride. His mother's dreams were riding on his success here, just as much as his own desires were. Naruto forced his hands into his pockets as he relegated himself to the long walk back to his apartment. He would take a shower first since Kyubi was sure to complain about the stench of humans otherwise. The gated houses acted almost like a maze, which Naruto admitted he struggled with solving when he could not use his wings to fly. Fortunately, he was familiar with the area enough to know to take a left at the closest juncture. As he turned the corner, he felt a similar presence close by. He struggled to identify the energy, as it seemed to pour over him in powerful waves. No doubt about it as his eyes narrowed in recognition, the same from the stall vendor. This isn't natural release either. Someone's out for blood. The worst part was their proximity to Naruto. He could feel that they were close, so close he could almost swear they were next to him. Such a brazen challenge in broad daylight was reserved for only two types of people: those who prided themselves on their ability to bluff, and those with the actual strength to back their intent up. To be safe, Naruto began to build his own energy, and create a barrier surrounding him. The last thing he needed was humans getting in the way if this person were to start wrecking the neighborhood. His pocket dimension would keep the real Ko safe while he dealt with whoever, or whatever this thing hunting him was. Their energy was something he had never quite felt before. The sheer amount of emotion behind their strength was something that surpassed even Kyubi's usual battle lust. Naruto continued down the street he was on in an attempt to calm his nerves and gather some distance between them. There was another intersection up ahead and he could sense the other presence was fast approaching, with each sequential wave of energy hitting him harder. Unfortunately, he failed to pinpoint the direction because of the sheer amount of energy being bounced around the area. His feet carried him to the center of the street. At that moment, standing in the middle of his barrier, he could feel their eyes on him. Naruto's head turned to the right, down one of the streets. The person that stood before him was nothing like he expected. Rather than be some supernatural beast or a devil king, he instead received a member of the church. From beneath her hood, Naruto could see brown eyes boring into him like a drill. All of the emotions he felt rolling off of the woman now came to a crescendo with them face to face. He easily recognized a level of hatred that was unheard of for a nun to have, and all of it was leveled directly at him. "Who are you?" he inquired. Given their lack of restraint, Naruto doubted they were in a talking mood. Still, if they were a member of the church, they had to at least be willing to talk before trying to kill him. "I have nothing to say to a dead man," they articulated with clear distaste. One of their hands grasped the collar of the cloak. With one swift motion, the woman uncovered her body to reveal herself wearing a battlesuit of some kind, a black leotard with matching gloves and boots that extended up her arms and legs. Around her neck she wore a crucifix, confirming his silent suspicions of them being a person of faith. When her energy spiked, he knew she was not lying. The woman, who he noted was aged no more than his mother, launched herself at him with incredible speed. He barely had time to force his wings out of his back before she was upon him. With some luck he was able to narrowly avoid her attack as her fist went flying down at the ground beneath him. She's not as fast as Kyubi, but, beneath him, the earth literally shattered from the impact of just the woman's fist. He could not tear his eyes away from the crater, easily larger than anything he had seen Kyubi manage, with the woman in the epicenter. She brushed some dirt from the knuckles of her fist, but otherwise showed no discomfort. If anything, the disgust that painted her face was because she had failed to hit him the first time. With her energy literally pouring off of her in almost physical streams of wind, he could not detect any special technique that had offered her such superhuman strength. With no manifestation on her body, he could not recognize the presence of a sacred gear either. Was the pigtailed blonde in front of him really human? Despite his apparent height advantage, she offered little sign of concern. Hunching over, she took hold of a large slab of rubble, once the concrete that made up the street, and pulled it from the ground with a mighty roar. With her great strength, she easily threw it toward him and forced Naruto to dodge. "I'm going to have my hands full here." He really wished Kyubi had chosen to join him now. What a fool. Letting himself get caught like that. In the woods, far removed from the city, Kyubi sat in a meadow. She was in a meditative stance, cross-legged with both hands pressed together, as her mind and energy reached out to cover the city. Her original objective had been to try and detect any interesting abnormalities that might lead her king to another potential piece, but she had eventually shifted gears to keeping an eye on him. The single piece of advice offered to her by both Kushina and the queen of Naruto's devil acquaintance was that the single most important duty of a queen was the protection of their king. Kyubi was used to her independence, so the thought of having to look out for someone else had not originally sat well with her. She knew from personal experience Naruto was no slouch in combat, but at the same time, she knew better than even he did that no one, not even herself, was infallible. Her intuition to follow his energy signature had turned out to be correct when a very hostile individual had traveled after him. From this spiritual vision, Kyubi could only make out the black and white outlines of people and buildings, but energy appeared as a bright blue fire to her. This person that had cornered Naruto was indeed dangerous, as the flames seemed to roll off her body with ease, physically affecting her surroundings. Her killing intent goes deeper than anything I've ever felt. Kyubi opened her eyes, having closed them to concentrate on her second type of sight, and roused herself from the ground. She did not have Naruto's useful teleportation ability, but she knew enough about magical circles that she could replicate one and get close to support him. With a wave of her arm, the makings of the familiar Mammon Crimson began to appear beneath her feet. A creeping feeling in her chest made her turn around toward the deeper part of the forest. There was nothing immediately visible, but she could have sworn she felt something. Her slitted eyes filtered back and forth to try and detect the presence again, but there was nothing. With some reluctance, she continued to build her magical circle. After a moment, she heard the distinctive crunch of someone breaking bark. So, I was right. QB cancelled her magical circle and shifted the power to her hands. The familiar white of fox fire began to gather. Her ears were particularly sensitive to such slight sounds, and so she tried to lock down the location of the person facing off against her. Unfortunately, despite their single slip-up, they were rather well trained and had managed to stay out of sight. Then, the glint of gold forced QB's attention to the top branches of the nearest tree. A hail of arrows fired from within the leaf-ridden branches forced her to leap to the side. In retaliation, she threw her complete fireball at the source. The inklings of their presence could be felt as they slipped away from QB's range. To have such great control on their release of energy was impressive and almost foreign in nature to the kitsune. As she expected, the fire completely destroyed the branch, but offered no body for her to see. Her eyes flicked back to the projectiles that had been used against her, and realized they were inherently different than the light weapons they had initially resembled. The arrows, while still retaining their bright yellow texture, were physical in nature. Someone had actually crafted them using a forge of some kind. She could sense a familiar tinge of spiritual energy inside of them, not unlike the presence that now hid within the surrounding forest. From her blind spot, another arrow came flying out from the trees. Aimed perfectly for a spot beneath her shoulder blade, the attack was sure to hit her heart if its trajectory was unchanged. Luckily, QB's enhanced ears detected the change in wind pressure from behind. She turned to face the attack head-on. If they are physical, then they are nothing more than glowing twigs to be broken. With her hand, QB swung out to push the well-aimed arrow away from her. As that part of her body touched the arrow, she sensed something very harmful coating it, the spirit energy. When QB's gloved hand touched the side of the arrow, her skin felt as if it had been set on fire and rocked her body with debilitating pain. Ku! The overwhelming pain was voiced with a single grunt. The arrow was successfully thrown off course, but QB had been severely wounded by just a glancing blow. She covered the sizzling hand and had to resist the urge to double over from the pain. Still, she was a nine-tailed fox and queen devil. She refused to offer her opponent the satisfaction of her crying out, "That spiritual energy is incredibly effective against me." Just what is it made of? Whatever magic was used in conjunction with the ranged attack was more than enough to kill QB if it so much as touched her main body. She could not afford to suffer a glancing blow to any of her extremities, as it was sure to disable her. Even with her healing powers, she felt the pain slow to go away. To defeat this opponent, she would have to focus all of her strength. Naruto would, regretfully, be on his own until she could wring the life from the person who dared to attack her from behind. Naruto weaved under another attack and felt the wind slap against his ear from how much power was behind the swing. He knew that to defeat the battle-crazed nun, he could not afford to stay in the air forever and had decided to face her on the ground. That was starting to become a mistake when he grasped that her skill was not just strength, but stamina. No matter how much power she put behind her attacks, she made no indication that she had started to tire. When he could build enough distance to attack with his chains, she was able to push them away with what he could only guess was the blessings of light embedded in her arms and legs. Speaking of, Naruto watched as she leaped away from him as more magical circles appeared. The demonic chains locked onto her like a target in the firing range. When they began to wrap around her wrists and arms, she unleashed another powerful burst of energy that caused the ground beneath her to crack and shift from the invisible weight. Given their strength, the chains did not break, but they were forced to loosen and let her go. Naruto could only whistle to display how impressed he was. The most astounding piece of all was that the few wounds he had managed to force on her were quickly healed. His eyes drifted to the identical rings on the woman's two middle fingers and recognized the familiar strength of a sacred gear being activated. Within seconds of the green light enveloping her hand, whatever wound she suffered went away with a single touch. This woman is exactly the type I've been looking for. Unfortunately, her overwhelming power made it difficult for him to formulate a plan to properly capture her. Without QB to aid him, he was at a serious disadvantage. The types of magic he had at his disposal were rather limited, and while he considered the thought of overwhelming her with chains like he did QB, he had a feeling her blessed aura would prevent the attack from taking full hold of her body. "You have great strength," Naruto confessed as he flew back out of her range using the wings on his back. "Can't you at least offer me your name?" "Fine," she said, a bitter smirk splayed across her lips. "You've survived long enough to earn that much, I suppose." He watched as she approached a light pole and placed her hand up against the cold steel. After a moment, her fingers clenched around the stalk and made it fold in like paper. Now holding the long object like a bat, she gave it a few test swings before setting her sights on his hovering figure. "My name is Tsunade," she declared with pride. Her legs tensed as she kicked off from the ground and sent herself straight toward him. "And you're just another devil to add to my list of kills." Naruto narrowly dodged out of the way of the aggressive attack. She was not one to give up so easily, and when her body began to fall back down to the earth, she twisted around and threw the pole at him. The attack was too close to dodge, and Naruto was forced to take the brunt of it head on, his arms up against his chest to protect the rest of his body. Ugh! The steel fell to the ground in a heap after hitting him, its body crushed beyond repair. Naruto panted from exhaustion and winced from the pain that racked the back of his arms. I can't survive another one of those. Inside his chest, he felt a familiar sense of danger affecting his missing queen piece. Kyubi must have been in a similar situation to him, which revealed the truth as to why she had not come to his aid sooner. As much as Naruto wanted to keep fighting and subdue Tsunade, he knew that as they were now, he would surely lose against her. He could not afford to lose Kyubi due to his own selfishness, either. If they could live to fight another day, he was confident that he and his queen could take Tsunade together. His mind made up, Naruto focused on the flying thunder god seal he had attached to the kitsune. She was a considerable distance away, but the teleportation would take only a moment. In a flash, he had disappeared. With him went the barrier and all of the protective magic involved. Tsunade, staring incredulously at the piece of sky he had once occupied, was now alone in a perfectly normal-looking street. Any damage they had created had disappeared like it had all been a dream of some kind. The nun's surprise lasted only a moment before a familiar look of rage crossed her visage. Her fist began to shake in what could only be a failed attempt to calm herself. In a sudden movement, the elbow snapped her fist into the nearest wall, causing it to instantly shatter from the great force. His surroundings quickly shifted from the blue sky and clouds to a field of green grass, surrounded by a thicket of wood. Naruto's eyes flickered around to get a better understanding of the place occupied by Kyubi. The nine-tailed fox in question was beneath him, huddled in a low crouch with a magical barrier covering her from attack. All around them on the ground were golden arrows that had been forced to harmlessly bounce off her shield. He quickly noticed that not all of the attacks had missed, as Kyubi was bleeding profusely from the leg with one of the golden arrows still stuck inside. Various other wounds decorated her body as glancing hits, he guessed. Naruto could not help but show his surprise at his queen's condition. He had never seen Kyubi struggle so much against an opponent. Not only that, but whatever rage she had was already lost to an odd emotion Naruto could only peg for genuine concern of her condition in the fight. "Kyubi!" he exclaimed, kneeling to join her. His hands wandered to the wound on her leg, and he wondered why she had not healed herself yet. With one hand, the nine-tails steadied herself on the ground and with the other maintained the ever-smaller barrier. So hurt was she that Naruto could see her body physically shaking in pain. Still, to her credit, Kyubi refused to even groan from discomfort. "Naruto, don't touch it!" Kyubi growled, forcing his hands to stop mere inches away from the arrow in her leg. "It's poisonous to the touch. The pain will disable you for sure." He narrowed his eyes, shifting from her nervous gaze to the wounded leg. No wonder the enemy had the advantage if they were using a dirty trick like that. Still, Naruto's eyes panned around and saw that the stumps of wood surrounding them had once been a healthy forest. Kyubi had burned it all down, leaving only broken and burning trunks behind. Whoever was out there, still pelting them with arrows, was quick enough to move from the remaining cover without so much as a shadow being left behind. "We need to get you out of here, Kyubi," Naruto whispered, tenderly grabbing her shoulder. Despite the direness of the situation, Naruto still had the strength for them to escape. "Before that, we have to lure them out long enough to see their face," Kyubi retorted, grunting as she shifted the wounded leg. "I've been studying their attacks and they don't resemble any kind of magic I've encountered. If we see their face, I can use it to identify them later." That was a tall order she was asking for, but there was some logic behind it. If this was a new or unique kind of magic, knowing what the user looked like would help their research. The answer was surprisingly astute for Kyubi, whom he had pegged earlier for being a pure battle junkie. "All right, but let me handle that. You have done enough." His eyes flicked back down to the arrow. The spiritual energy inside would prevent Kyubi from properly entering his body if he were to try and absorb her, and she obviously could not walk on that leg. "We have to remove it first though." Kyubi's eyes widened when she saw his hands again go to reach for the wound. Her free hand grasped his wrist with an unnecessary amount of strength. "Didn't you hear what I said before?" Her voice cracked from her growing sense of desperation. "I know, but I can take it." Naruto's bluff was horrible, but if he was going to risk getting hit by one of them, then he had to know what it felt like. With his one free hand, he bypassed Kyubi's defense and latched onto the golden arrow. His eyes snapped shut as he waited for the pain to hit, but nothing came. After a moment or two, he tightened his grip on the golden arrow, and yet still, he felt nothing but the solid object against his palm. Kyubi sat silently in shock, unable to believe he held it without feeling anything. Was what pain she was suffering from a part of the magic, like a type of illusion? Or was it that somehow, she had something that made the energy inside react negatively that he did not share? Either way, they knew something else about the arrow's special properties. With a quick application of force, Naruto removed the arrow. The pain was too much for Kyubi to handle, and finally she let out a violent cry of anguish. She practically fell into his arms, unable to move from sheer shock. The magical circle surrounding them disappeared and left them open for attack. Their opponent was ruthless and quickly launched another dozen of the projectiles. Naruto took Kyubi into his arms like a princess, and rolled out of the way from the barrage of arrows. In the middle of a grassy field with no cover, Naruto knew they had no chance of hiding, and he figured their enemy had the skill to find them even if they did try. Naruto sprouted his wings again and rose into the sky. He looked down upon the limp woman he held in his arms and realized how fragile Kyubi looked. Holding her like this, with her considerable bust pressed against his chest and soft skin against his arms, reminded him that despite all of her fury, Kyubi was still a woman. The snow-white skin the fox prided herself on began to glow, as he felt her energy flow inside of him. "Still alive, partner?" he asked after her body had left his arms. "Somehow. Just don't let them get away." Naruto narrowed his eyes at the ground below them. With his bird's-eye view he could see well past the limited perspective they had in the scorched meadow. After a moment of scanning the area, he noticed a dark shadow that hugged one of the trees and knew that had to be them. They hid their spiritual presence well, but against the light of the sun, not even they could turn invisible. The shadows shifted and he knew they were readying another attack. He also knew the light from the sun would make it difficult for them to aim directly up, so he kept on the move while he gathered magical energy. With their skill, the only chance he had at forcing them to reveal themselves was putting himself in danger. If he offered them a trade, he had to guess their pride would force them out. Naruto summoned a group of magical circles near the enemy's hiding spot and released the familiar chains. Just as he thought, their speed was so impressive that the chains only found thin air left by the time they reached the piece of cover. But he had forced them out and had to keep them on the move. If they kept moving, then they would start to tire and make mistakes. Not one to be kicked without respite, he noticed another arrow flying at him. He easily dodged out of the way, but he kept his eye on it just to be sure. As if it were alive, the arrow turned in the air and flew after him like a heat-seeking missile. The magic inside of them must have been powerful indeed to pull something like that off. With the arrow close behind, he swept down to the ground and chased after the archer himself. He summoned more magical circles and this time released a torrent of fire after them, burning everything that could offer them cover. One of the fireballs snapped a broken trunk in half that had been acting as their hiding place. Then he saw the shadow leap out into the open, with another arrow pointed and ready to fire at him. The slender figure had long, coral hair held back in a high ponytail which offered him their suspected gender. Clad in a tight green leotard with what appeared to be pieces of steel armor over the chest, she wore matching pairs of gloves and heeled boots that stretched up her legs. On her back was a silver-encrusted quiver, filled to the brim with arrows of the same make she had been shooting at them all day. With no hesitation she released the second arrow that targeted his forehead. With one attack coming at him from behind and one in the front, she no doubt felt confident in the kill. Unfortunately, she underestimated his speed. In a blink, Naruto had disappeared along with his magical attacks. The two golden arrows smacked into each other in midair, falling harmlessly to the ground. The archer readied another arrow, her body locked in anticipation of his appearance. After a tense while she gave up waiting and realized that her prey had escaped. For now at least. "I have to say, Naruto-kun, I was expecting something a bit more fun for our first date." On the rooftop of his apartment, Naruto stood across from his fallen angel teacher. He had given her a call with the cell phone number she provided in class and asked her to meet him. Kyubi was inside his apartment, resting and doing her own bit of research with what books they had scavenged from the library. To be of use, he decided to use the wild card Fuka represented and see if she knew anything about this unknown spirit. Their strength was notable, enough to give his queen a hard time. That meant they were a threat to more than just him, but everyone in the valley. "Sorry, but this isn't a social call," Naruto said with an unapologetic tone of voice. Kyubi's condition weighed heavily on his mind, and was affecting his mood. "I was attacked earlier today and I want to find out who it was." Fuka's playful demeanor faded when she noticed his attitude. Clad in her fallen angel outfit, she acknowledged the gravity of the situation and crossed her arms expectantly. "A woman in some leotard outfit I've never seen before. Fired golden arrows that were poisonous to Kyubi, but didn't hurt me. She was incredibly fast too." Naruto offered the major points to his counterpart. The rest of the details surrounding their encounter would only drag the conversation on into speculation. "Doesn't ring a bell of anyone specific." "Was it a light weapon?" Fuka asked. She was following a similar train of thought he originally shared, but had the weapon been made of light he too would have been burned. "No, otherwise it would have hurt me too. She didn't show any kind of capability in flying, now that I think about it. If she were an angel or devil, she could have used her wings." Naruto expressed his thoughts out loud, sparking further conversation. "If she didn't have wings, that leaves the three factions out. Either she was some sacred gear user, a creature made to look like a human, or maybe she's completely foreign," Fuka commented, finger caressing her chin in thought. Naruto perked up at her final note. A foreigner of some kind might make some kind of sense. Her skill, if she had been wielding a sacred gear, would have implied great natural talent on her end with archery. With that unnatural speed, he just could not recognize her as a normal human. "What do you mean by foreign?" He probed his teacher's idle thoughts. Fuka's eyes narrowed in response to his question. With her brain now on the topic, she paused a moment before offering her first impression. "Well, if we rule out her being a normal human, then there is the chance she comes from another religion. The fallen angels, devils, and angels all fit under the larger Christianity, but there are plenty of others out there. Maybe she came from somewhere else in Asia, or Europe? She could even be a god herself. The thought that he and Kyubi had just faced off someone of divine level was chilling, to say the least. But Fuka's extrapolation was starting to make more and more sense in his head. I think you are onto something, Fuka-sensei. What kind of repercussions could there be for another religion attacking us? There had to be some sort of treaty or basic understanding between religions, otherwise something bigger than even the Great War between the three factions would have occurred by then. If this person was willing to break that by attacking Kyubi, what did that mean about their sense of self-confidence? They were literally defying all devil authority by attacking them so freely. Either they were stupid or ridiculously powerful. Well, if they aren't careful about who they target, they could make themselves the enemy of every faction, Fuka said, confirming his suspicions. That would spell trouble for more than just them, but also everyone else from wherever they're from. I guess for now we just have to keep our eyes open for when they strike again. If they do. He added the last part on as an afterthought, since he was fairly confident they would come again. Someone with that level of skill had not come to Japan just for one failed hunt. They were here for something bigger. He just knew it. Well, I'm happy to be of help. Fuka's grin widened into something quite devilish. She approached him and placed her hands on his cheeks, holding his face still. I'll take my reward now. Naruto decided not to struggle against the fallen angel, since he had promised to give her something if she offered something useful. He had a sneaking suspicion it would be a kiss, and it seemed Fuka was not one to disappoint. Their lips met, her dark red lipstick rubbing against his pale pink skin. Her experience far outweighed his own, and he felt himself melting into putty right in her arms. One of her hands released his cheek and captured his limp wrist, forcing his hand onto her naked hips. His other hand fell to the same fate as the redhead moaned into his mouth, her tongue pushing against his entrance. Unable to refuse, he let her enter his mouth and found himself moaning from the sheer lust behind her attack. He had no idea how strong a kiss could be until she gave him his first. That was right, he realized Fuka had stolen his first kiss like it was nothing. But as she deepened the kiss and forced their tongues to battle, he felt a part of his energy rising up from his stomach. Through his mouth, he felt her take in a portion of his demonic energy. His moaning turned into muffled grunts as he tried to push her away to little effect. Fuka opened her eyes as she slowly began to pull away from him. Apart from the saliva that connected their bruised lips, a visible blue stream of energy extended from the depths of Naruto's mouth into Fuka's. The trail disappeared when Fuka closed her mouth and seductively wiped her lips. Naruto stumbled back in an attempt to defend himself, but Fuka made no moves to attack. A low purr from deep within her chest made it very clear she was satisfied with whatever she had just done. You taste good, Naruto-kun, Fuka commented, with a particularly sultry undertone. With a finger to her lips, she teased him by blowing another kiss his way. Thanks for the energy, and don't worry, I didn't take too much. It will come back with time. What the hell was that? Her assurances meant little to him at the moment as he struggled to figure out just what she did to him. No one had ever mentioned to him that fallen angels had such a power to take energy. A gift from my previous master. Fuka's smile turned hollow as she lost the excitement from before. She was remembering something with what looked like regret. Farewell, Naruto-kun. Before he could press the issue, she took off with those jet black wings of hers. Now alone he forced himself to calm down. If she had wanted to do something malicious, she could have during his weakness. For some reason, Fuka wanted his energy, and if it were going to restore itself as she promised, then he supposed there was little issue. Still, he reminded himself to be mindful of beautiful women and their lips in the future. That same night, Rias found herself on her way back to the female dormitory after an exhausting night of contract work. Unfortunately, Akeno's usual presence was absent as she was forced to remain late at her final job of the night. No matter, Rias thought, as she had not planned to stay up long anyway. Aika is still struggling over that nun issue. I'll have to talk to her tomorrow. Her beloved servant, and newest member of the Gremry family, owner of a sacred gear far more powerful than the twice critical it resembled, had stubbornly been ignoring Rias' advice on the matter. Despite her perverted exterior, the young girl had a rather large heart that Rias could only empathize with. Still, they could not afford to start stepping into everyone's business simply on a heroic whim. If she were younger with a similar conundrum, she may have asked her brother for advice. Now, Rias had chosen to walk the path of a proper heiress, and would handle things herself. She may like to spoil her servants for the most part, but with Aika she may have really needed to put her foot down. So enraptured by her thoughts was she that Rias failed to sense the presence tailing her. Not that it would have been an easy feat for even someone of her level, as this person had displayed great ability in covering their tracks while they hunted. From the nearby trees within the school grounds, the archer took careful aim at the devil princess. Rias stopped walking as she sensed an unfamiliar magic come over the school. Noting a change in the color of the sky, she realized that she had been caught in someone's barrier. With a narrow gaze she began to look around in an attempt to find the source. It was at that moment she noticed a single golden arrow flying at her face. So quick was it that she knew it would hit before she could craft a spell for defense. Rias willed her legs to move but found herself too slow to move out of the way in time. Is this really? A crimson liquid sprayed across her face as a foreign set of arms wrapped themselves around her. Rias felt this new presence as they lifted her into their arms mid-stride, moving past the arrow. Her aquamarine eyes widened as she felt the warmth of the blood on her cheek. There was no pain anywhere on her body, which baffled her for a moment until she grasped that it was not her that had been wounded, but the young man that had rescued her. Hey, Rias-chan, the person holding her whispered his greeting in her ear. The Crimson Princess looked up into the eyes of her savior and quickly put a name to the face. For some reason, despite his arm bleeding profusely from the glancing hit, Naruto managed to offer her a smile. Good to see we made it in time. And Naruto-kun? Rias stammered in shock. He was the last person she would have expected to come to her rescue. An explosion rocked the ground beneath their feet. On instinct, her arms wrapped around Naruto's neck as she tried to stabilize herself. Their eyes wandered down the field where Kyubi had just finished obliterating the wooded area in a single attack. Naruto's servant must have been out for blood, Rias thought, as she had never seen such a powerful opening move. When Kyubi used her meditation to track down the archer, she noticed you were here too. I figured that she must have been after you too. We raced here as soon as we could, Naruto explained as he offered to let her stand on her own feet, an opportunity she took. Rias looked at his arm with no small amount of concern. Despite it failing to hit him directly, the sharpened end of the arrow had sliced open his skin and caused the arm to bleed a considerable amount. Blood dripped down to his hand and onto the ground, but Naruto displayed nothing in the way of pain. Archer? Rias asked, her eyes then shifting back to the nine tails. Their speed was impressive as they moved about the battlefield, but Rias could indeed see a second individual wielding a golden bow. Who is that? She had never seen anyone like that around her before. What had made them want to attack her? Naruto knew more than he let on, but she supposed the battle would have to come first before answers. Rias gathered her own demonic energy to use with her power of destruction. Before she could release her own magic, Naruto held up a hand in front of her. He simply shook his head and bid her to watch. My queen has a score to settle with her. I know that Kyubi can handle herself, so let's stay out of it for now. Rias could detect a hint of frustration in Naruto's tone, and she knew he wanted to join in as well. He truly cared for his servant, just as she did for her own. Out of respect for him and his rescue of her, Rias abided by his wish. Together they remained in the back as Kyubi and the mystery woman continued their fight. Kyubi created a magical circle and knocked the arrow away before it could hit her body. In retaliation, she gathered energy around her tails and threw a flurry of fireballs at her agile opponent. Without the trees to use for cover, the archer had been constantly leaping about in the air as she fired to keep Kyubi off balance. Remaining in the air left her vulnerable to a well-aimed attack, though. The archer, an Amazon in height and build, took out 3 arrows and fired each in quick succession. Each hit a fireball, causing the attacks to cancel one another out. There, one of Kyubi's fireballs had not been directly aimed at her, which had caused her opponent to ignore the attack. Instead, the fireball hit the ground where the archer was about to fall and allowed a large explosion to rock the battlefield. Not one to lose the momentum of her offensive, Kyubi waved her arm about in front of her and created a dozen magical circles. Rather than spawn an attack of some kind, Kyubi instead pushed the circles closer to the smoking crater and surrounded the area with a thick magical force. Now surrounding the archer was a near impenetrable barrier, rendering her unable to escape. Kyubi was now free to kill the struggling insect as she pleased. That's enough, Kyubi, she heard Naruto give the order from behind. He and the other devil girl had closed the distance after the barrier had been erected. She contemplated whether to disobey him and follow through with the attack, but ultimately decided against it. Good job. You did well. I'm assuming you have something you want to say to the little pest? Kyubi sneered, and her tone made it very clear she wanted nothing more to finish them off. That's right. I think it's time we appropriately greet our foreign counterpart, Naruto said as he stepped past Kyubi and approached the edge of the entrapment. Kyubi lowered her arm but kept her concentration on the barrier. So far, the single person inside had not tried to escape, but she would not put it past them. They were too dangerous to just release again, so she hoped Naruto had something in mind. Rias remained at her side as the two watched Naruto open his dialogue. Hey, you still alive in there? Naruto called out to the warrior woman as she stood in the center of the crater, unmoving and silent. Whether she had resigned to her fate or was formulating a method to escape was hard to say, but Naruto had no intentions of letting her go. From beneath the woman's feet, another mammon circle appeared and Naruto's chains took hold of her body. She was forced to drop her bow in the ensuing struggle that left her properly restrained. Kyubi kept the barrier up though just in case she managed to escape. You just tried to kill a high-class devil and sister of one of the Mao, Naruto said, trying to make his tone sound at least somewhat intimidating. He raised an inquisitive brow at her lack of response. You sure you have nothing to say in your defense? Artemis? The last word he uttered was said as more of a question than a statement as he tried to get a rise out of her. The tactic worked as the woman widened her eyes and ceased her futile struggle against his chains. How do you know my name, demon? Naruto could not help but smirk at his sudden advantage. After you attacked my queen, Naruto hitched a thumb over his shoulder, the 9 tails over there, she and I made sure to do a little bit of research. We happened to come across a Hellenic demigoddess that sounded a lot like you. Artemis? Rias muttered behind him. As in the Greek goddess of the hunt? The same, Naruto said in return. His eyes narrowed on the bow and arrows, now useless to restrained woman. We also found out she has a habit of both hurting and helping women. Apparently her arrows are particularly toxic to the female gender. Artemis offered them nothing but a venomous glare. As someone of her level of strength, Naruto was sure she rarely if ever ran into someone who could actually give her trouble like they did. She was lucky they caught her before she managed to kill Rias, since he was fairly certain Surzex Lucifer would not be so kind as to capture her. It goes without saying your attempt to kill us means you are well out of your scope. What made you come all the way out here to our territory? Naruto demanded of the goddess. I came for the hunt, of course. In Olympus we have all heard rumors of the supernatural beasts here in Japan, like the 9-tailed foxes, and so I wanted to test myself. Artemis had mostly calmed herself as she offered them the explanation with no added bite. Naruto was inclined to believe she was not lying. Gods easily grew bored when they had nothing interesting to do, and he could imagine traveling to new places would be a viable option. Unfortunately for Artemis, her added hobby of hunting sealed the deal to her demise. That explains your attack on the 9 tails, but why did you attack me? Rias asked as she stepped forward to join Naruto. She looked rather cross with her arms over her chest, and her eyes leveling a harsh stare toward the Greek goddess. I knew devils were powerful creatures too. Before I hunted the 9-tailed fox, I watched the city for some time and made note of your own powers as a worthy hunt, Artemis said, narrowing her eyes. I had no idea your relation with each other, or who you were. Well, Rias said, her tone softening a bit. I'm not surprised to find you lack knowledge of devil hierarchy, or our familial relationships. My compatriot was right, however, in stating you made a mistake attacking us. And now? What do you plan to do with me? Artemis asked with a considerable amount of fight left in her tone. Well, in most cases you would be executed. Not even your stature in the Hellenic court would have saved you from the Mao, Rias offered when Naruto said nothing. She's right. But if my assumption is correct, you aren't a full god, are you? Naruto asked for clarification on his educated guess. Artemis failed to hide her shock very well. After an internal struggle she offered them a confirming nod. The real Artemis was killed in a conflict long ago between the Hellenic and Latin courts of gods. I'm her latest reincarnation, but I'm also part human. Fascinating, Rias whispered by Naruto's side. Then there is an option to prevent you from dying. You might even get to hunt every once in a while. Naruto said, his smile widening. As penance for attacking us, I'll have you serve me as a devil. Only Kyubi remained unsurprised at Naruto's declaration. In return, you get to live and hunt my enemies. If you want to return home for a visit we can arrange that as well. Serve you? A demon? Artemis said with no small amount of venom in her tone. Naruto's smile faded as he held up his arm and forced the chains to tighten around her neck. As the Greek goddess struggled for air, the point was made very clear that her life was in his hands at the moment. Your choice. Die a failure of a hunter, or earn back your honor by fighting some of the most dangerous enemies Christianity and Japan have to offer. Naruto loosened the chains a bit, just enough for her to breathe. Rias offered her fellow devil an approving grin. Naruto had started to learn from Rias' earlier warnings and had become a bit more conniving than before. Artemis shook her head in what could only be defeat. Her chocolate eyes gazed into his blue ones and Naruto knew he had his answer. Very well, Kyubi. With Naruto's silent order, the kitsune released her barrier. Still, she walked with Naruto and remained on her guard as they joined Artemis in the crater. From within his chest, a glowing light enveloped Naruto as he summoned the appropriate evil piece. In his hand, a crimson red knight piece appeared. He pressed it into the still restrained Artemis' chest and watched as it disappeared and integrated into her body. Artemis of Olympus, you now serve me, Naruto Mammon. With a wave of his arm, the chains holding the Amazon disappeared. She stood at her full height, easily towering above Naruto and the others. Their eyes met as he continued to speak. As my knight, you will slay my enemies and protect my family against any who would threaten our safety. What say you? Artemis offered him nothing for a few moments. Then, just as Kyubi had, she set aside her own pride and lowered her head to Naruto. My bow is yours, Naruto. Fuka looked down upon one of Koa's many churches that served to aid the populace in keeping their faith. Except the one she observed was dedicated to anything but, a group of fallen had chosen to make their homes there. From the rumors she had heard, one of Fuka's previous compatriots, from the time with her old master, had come to town to meet with the fallen there. There is no mistaking this scent of yours. Fuen. The sacred gears of this town had in the past been the only draw of those from the 3 factions. She knew Rainier and her ilk were no different in their hunt as they tried to gain favor with the Grigori. Her precious student Naruto had his own desires that lied in using the humans too. Many had confused Fuka's presence in the town with similar intentions, but they could not be farther from the truth. Fuka had come to this town to run away from that kind of conflict. She wanted nothing more to enjoy herself as a teacher at the Koa Academy and tease her students to no end. If she never had to see another fallen angel, it would be too soon. Unfortunately, Old grudges died hard with the redhead. Fuka narrowed her eyes as she saw movement in the church below. With her outstretched hand she summoned a spear of light, tinted fuchsia. There was one last matter she had to solve that involved this old comrade of hers. A matching set of raven wings flapped behind the fast-approaching figure from the ground. Together they stood across from one another, hovering above in the night sky. While Fuka had prepared her weapon, the woman opposite chose to do no such thing. She could only guess it was some attempt to mock her. No doubt about it. Fuen, Fuka whispered her name like it was venom. I can't believe you would show your face here, of all places. You have made your last mistake. Fuka readied her spear of light but hesitated when her opponent began to snicker. The woman called Fuen had long, dark hair that flowed down her back and onto the chest. She was taller than Fuka and readily appeared older, though her voluptuous figure nonetheless was barely contained by her skimpy armor outfit not unlike the one Fuka wore. Oh, Fuka, Fuen chided, her tone full of condescension. Let me guess, my first mistake was stealing our master's affection away from you? Give me a break. As her hands tightened around the spear of light, Fuka's rising emotions began to show themselves. She knew Fuen was just trying to get inside her head, but it did not make her words any less true. You should feel lucky, Fuka dear, that our master even bothered to waste that sacred gear on you, Fuen said, laughing again as Fuka's brows shot up. Yes, I remember it well. Paralyzing touch, right? Don't mock me. Fuka shot forward with her wings. Her spear was pointed straight for Fuen as they threatened to collide. A shot of light appeared and Fuen wielded her own light spear, this one colored in the shade of amber. The weapons sparked against one another just before the attack could spear through Fuen. Fuka forced all of her weight into the spear as their faces almost touched from proximity. Fuen, rather than be concerned, simply offered her old friend a lazy smile. I'm afraid you haven't gotten any better since the last time we fought. Fuen weaved out of the way of another strike. She sent her own spear for Fuka, who was just barely able to block in time. You are still as emotional as ever. Shut up. Fuka flew back to gain some distance between them. Wielding her spear like a javelin, she threw it straight for Fuen. Unimpressed, Fuen smacked the light weapon with her own and forced it to crumble into nothingness. In the short but vicious encounter, neither had managed to sustain a wound. Come now, Fuka. We both know you were always terrible with magic. Your spear is all you have, Fuen said, a dangerous look in her eye. The taunting shifted into something much more threatening. You leave yourself open. Fuka saw her opponent fly straight toward her with weapon in hand. The loss of her spear was done on purpose though, contrary to what Fuen believed. Summoning the energy she took from Naruto, Fuka forced a magical circle to appear between them. That's Fuen paused, taken aback. Chains launched out from the crimson circle and surrounded Fuen. They wrapped around her body and painfully embedded themselves with barbs. The cry of pain the other fallen angel released was music to Fuka's ears as she forced the chains to tighten around her body. I only had enough to make one magic circle, but it should be enough. Now that Fuen was immobilized, Fuka could finish her off. The chains created by her paled in comparison to their original owner, but for someone like Fuen, it would be enough. Fuka summoned another spear of light and allowed herself to smile in victory. She had finally defeated Fuen and gotten her revenge. Its old Fuka's eyes widened when she was overshadowed by darkness. In the next moment, she was surrounded by the fallen she recognized as Rainier's band of misfits. The Busticala Warner was in front of her with a light blade held to Fuka's neck. The Pipsqueak Middlet and the Stalker Donaseek were at her sides with similar weapons held to Fuka's vital spots. You! Her eyes shifted past them and saw Rainier remove the chains from Fuen. No, she was so close. What kind of deal had they made for Fuen to get away with this? Fuka was shaking with unbridled rage as tears began to build in her eyes. I heard some racket and decided to investigate, Rainier said. Her vicious smile turned soft as she went from Fuka to the freed Fuen. I expect our deal is still on, then? Right, Fuen muttered. All of the play had been removed from her tone. She returned Fuka's glare with one of her own. I hadn't expected her to find something so powerful in a short time. I got careless. Then I'll be taking her, Rainier said, snapping her fingers. Before Fuka could say another word, Donaseek's arms slammed against the back of her neck. She was knocked unconscious and taken into the larger man's arms. I hope I can report her death to my master with validity this time? Fuen posed the question to Rainier as the other fallen retreated back into the church with Fuka. Rainier narrowed her eyes at Fuen's expectant tone, but nodded nonetheless. Yes, I'll involve her with the ritual tonight. She will die along with the others. After Rainier said that, Fuen finally offered what could only be a relieved grin. Good, then our business is concluded. Fuen built up her magic and summoned a portal, disappearing in a bright light. The smile Rainier had offered her was lost as soon as she had disappeared. Rainier's gaze drifted back down to the church and deeper within, the plans she had carefully prepared. A smile that could only be described as demonic was splayed across her lips. This will be a good night, I'm sure of it. Naruto found himself trailing behind the recently introduced Tsubaki Shinra. The vice president of the student council had requested, as an order from her president, that he stay after school to discuss something with them. While Naruto did not want to cause any trouble with humans, he had originally planned to ignore the request. That was until he realized the student council were a family of devils, similar to Rias' club in that they used it as a disguise. If it were a request from a fellow devil, then Naruto did not see a problem with entertaining them. His mood had also risen when the bespectacled girl told him Rias was not only going to be in attendance, but was the one to originally propose the meeting. From the sense I'm getting, this is a kind of emergency. As he and Tsubaki paraded through the halls, he was joined by Kyubi and Artemis. Both were loyal members of his peerage, and it only made sense that wherever he go, they would not be far behind. The capture and integration of Artemis into his family was still a fresh memory, and Naruto could not help but feel a little bit of pride as the knight strode alongside him. Artemis had adapted well to the sudden change, both in her body and her place in society. Since he had already been a witness to her skill in battle, he had no need for her to further prove her worth. They had yet to join together in a battle, but he was sure he could count on her. "We are here, Naruto-sama," Tsubaki said as she approached a set of old wooden doors that led to the student council meeting room. She stood to one side and opened the door for him to enter, bowing her head in respect. Naruto nodded and entered through the door. Before he was fully through, he turned back to Tsubaki. When she noticed he did not pass her, she looked up and was greeted by a cheeky smile of his. He enjoyed the flustered look that came over her face. "You know, you don't have to call me Naruto-sama. I wouldn't mind it if you and the others in the student council called me Naruto-kun," he said, mimicking his offer to the occult research club. "As nice as the title is, that isn't how you make friends." If he wanted to succeed where his ancestors failed, he had to learn a bit of humility. "Yeah, I'll be sure to relay that to the others," Tsubaki stammered out as his surprise attack was a success. "Good, then shall we go?" he called to his compatriots as he entered. Out of concern, he turned to make sure they were comfortable. Kyubi had chosen to roll her eyes in response but followed him inside all the same. Artemis was forced to duck under the head of the door but quickly caught back up. The vice president entered last and closed the door behind them. "Welcome, Naruto-kun," Rias said from her seat at the round table. "Please sit, Naruto Mamandano," offered the other girl at the table, who had short dark hair and another pair of glasses. He quickly recognized her as the student council president, Soma Shirtorai. Naruto's eyes reviewed the room he was in and noticed that they were in fact surrounded by other devils. Rias and Soma's peerage stood behind their respectful masters, against the back walls. There was a single empty seat at the table for him to take. It almost made him think they were going to have a war council or peace talks of some sort, and his stomach suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. "Thanks," Naruto said, taking the seat. Kyubi and Artemis stood behind him, across the room from Rias' own family. Despite the tense atmosphere, Akeno and the others seemed to be in good spirits. Naruto's attention drifted past Rias again to take a double take. One devil was missing. Aika, the pervert girl. Perhaps that was why he had been called here on such short notice. He would have to wait and see to be sure. "Thank you for agreeing to come on such short notice, Mamandano. I know it was rude of us to extend an invitation without a proper greeting, but Rias assured me you would come with mention of her name," Soma said, bowing her head slightly in apology. "Of course, she's a precious devil friend after all." Naruto's gaze met Rias, and she offered him a smile. He turned back to Soma with a flash of interest. "I had a suspicion you were a devil, council president, but I didn't think we would get introduced under such circumstances." "Yes, forgive me. My real name is Sona Citri, heir apparent of the Citri clan of devils." He could sense the pride with which she spoke her family's name. Sona then bowed her head again. "Please, you may call me Sona. I'm Naruto Mammon, but you seem to know that already. You can call me Naruto, if you'd like." He motioned toward Tsubaki, who stood behind Sona. "I already made the same offer to your lovely queen." Sona raised a brow at his term of endearment for the vice president, but then she began to smile in what could only be amusement. Given his offer of a change in title, she nodded in acquiescence. Behind her, Tsubaki nursed her recently flushed cheeks. "Very well, Naruto-san. Now, as Rias called this meeting in the first place, I think we had best let her speak," Sona said, nodding to Rias, who had chosen to stay respectably silent during their introduction. "First of all, thank you both for coming." Rias intertwined her fingers together as she offered the two of them an apologetic smile. "I know it was selfish of me." Naruto and Sona both nodded in reassurance for the Crimson Princess. "When you were in trouble, sometimes relying on your friends was the best course of action. I will get straight to the heart of the matter. My newest pawn, Aika, has disappeared," Rias explained, and her mood quickly dropped as a result. "We fear she may have been taken by a rival faction. I know how valuable family is to you, Rias-chan, but what significance is there in your pawn?" Naruto asked the red-headed devil. As much as he wanted to help her, a single missing pawn did not seem like enough of a reason to rouse the town's army of devils for a manhunt. If he were in a similar situation, he would not rest until he had rescued his family member, but he still felt like he was missing a part of the equation. Sona turned to Rias, addressing her friend. "I suppose you haven't told him about Aika then, have you, Rias?" Despite asking the question, the council president did not seem particularly surprised. "No, as I saw no reason for it before." "I suppose it can't be helped now," Rias said with a shrug of dismissal. "Naruto," Rias gazed into his eyes and he quickly picked up on the importance of her secret. "Aika took all 8 of my pawns to resurrect. At first I was confused, as she only displayed the ability to summon the twice critical dragon-type sacred gear. I later found out that there was much more to her than what met the eye. Naruto crossed his arms in thought as he continued to listen. He had to admit that he was interested in what she had to say, especially now that Fuka's rumor was confirmed by Rias. Aika contains the infamous Security inside of her sacred gear, with the ability to double her power every 10 seconds. With that kind of sacred gear, if someone manipulated her or it fell into the wrong hands, the entire world could be in danger, Rias confessed, her brow wrinkled from stress. The power of the Red Dragon Emperor in the palm of his hand. Now that was something enticing for just about anybody, devil or no. Rias had successfully taken it for herself, but it seemed she was not the only one aware of its strength. And what makes you believe she has been taken? We should have some proof before we move, Sona said, after a moment had been offered for the information to sink in. The student council president was always working the logical angle. Rias narrowed her eyes in what Naruto thought looked like frustration. After a moment, she began to speak with a small amount of regret laced in her tone. This whole mess started after Aika became acquainted with a girl by the name of Asia Argento. She is a nun who appears to have the Twilight Healing Sacred Gear, and is currently working with the Fallen Angels, though Aika assured me that their partnership was not by choice. A nun working with the Fallen Angels? Doesn't make much sense to me, Naruto admitted. The nuns and priests were supposed to be on the side of God. Anything else would have led to their excommunication. When one of the church's faithful make a mistake, they can either be forgiven or exiled. It is possible that this girl is one of the latter, Sona said in response. If she were exiled, Rias cut in, her eyes narrowed. Then she would no longer be able to rely on the church to live. The Fallen must have discovered her sacred gear and considered her worth something, at least enough to take care of her. And you think Aika went after Asia? Sona asked. She then readjusted her glasses to the bridge of her nose. I thought you made it clear to her she was not to pursue them? Rias could do nothing but sigh in what he pegged for defeat. To be honest, I knew something like this would happen. That was why I planned to set up the events so that we would face the Fallen Angels together. But Rias began to trail off and she bit her thumb in annoyance. But she went on ahead herself. Naruto finished the sentence for her, equally exasperated. The uncomfortable feeling in his gut was only getting worse. The table remained uncomfortably silent until Naruto straightened up. A stray thought in his mind had suddenly pushed itself to the tip of his tongue, and he simply felt the need to ask. His compatriots had noticed his sudden twitch and had their eyes on him, waiting. If she is the Security's owner, as you say, couldn't she use the power to defend herself? I thought it was supposed to be one of the Longinus, the 13 unique sacred gears that were irreplaceable, Naruto said, as he knew at least some things concerning sacred gears, mostly from having one of his own. Rias offered him a pair of remorseful eyes as she merely shook her head. Aika is still too physically weak to properly use that power effectively, she said, and Naruto finally understood why she was so worried for her servant's safety. So, why have you not gone after her yourselves? Sona asked, pushing the conversation forward. Rias nodded in response. We have located their suspected base of operations at one of the nearby churches, but I wanted to cover my bases all the same. Given that Aika has put us in this difficult situation, I don't want to take any further risks that may endanger her. This is partly my fault, after all, Rias muttered, sounding rather bitter about herself. Well then, Naruto said as he stood up from his chair. He offered his fellow devils a confident smirk. We just have to go and save her, right? Rias' nervous fidgeting with her hands ended as he said those words. She was stunned for a moment, before her lips began to curve into appreciation. The rest of Rias' peerage, who had been struggling with their own stress, noticeably let their shoulders sag in relief to Naruto's declaration of support. They too offered him their own appreciation with smiles and silent words of thanks. As heroic as that was, Naruto-san, Sona interrupted his moment, though she was smiling. Perhaps we can come up with some kind of strategy before we leave? Rias turned back to her fellow female devil and giggled a bit. She had to have been entertaining a similar idea. Naruto chuckled and pocketed his hands. The prospect of taking the fight to the Fallen Angels had gotten him a little too excited. He was eager to see what Rias and the others could do, so he just wanted to head out right away. Not only that, but he wanted to see QB and Artemis work together for the first time. Sorry, of course that makes sense. Naruto remained where he stood, but indicated she continue. What did you have in mind, Sona-san? Sona turned her head to look behind her. Tsubaki, in response, Sona's queen stepped forward and stood at attention. Is everyone rested? She asked. Yes, Council President. They are ready to go, Tsubaki said. From behind the two young women, Naruto saw the single man of the student council pump his fist in excitement. He seemed to echo the vice president's statements rather well. Good. Rias, Naruto-san, Sona addressed the two of them. The student council will deploy a barrier surrounding the enemy territory and ensure no one escapes. Your two groups should be able to handle the inside. A good plan, Sona, Rias commented. She turned to Naruto, smiling. How does that sound, Naruto-kun? I think it's time we go teach these fallen angels a lesson they won't live to forget. Naruto grew a devilish smile not unlike his mother's. Rias and Sona both shared it with him. The young devils were on the warpath. Naruto-kun. In response to his name being called, Naruto paused in the hallway. The other devils were still shuffling out of the room to make their preparations and head to the site. Kyuubi and Artemis were a little ahead of him, and paused as he did. They saw Rias approach him with Akeno close behind. Rias-chan, don't worry about Aika. Naruto thumbed his chest, offering her another smile. I'll help you get her back safe and sound. I know, Naruto-kun. Thank you for supporting me. She offered him another sweet smile that made him melt. It was a very heroic thing to do, Naruto-kun. Akeno said, giggling as she did. How is your arm? Asked Rias as she shifted the subject away from the meeting. He noticed her small fingers gently tug on the sleeve of his blazer, close to where he suffered the wound from Artemis' arrow. There was a certain feeling of guilt he gleaned from her eyes. His smile grew a bit as his own hand wrapped around hers, offering it a friendly squeeze. I'm fine. He motioned to behind him where Kyuubi stood, her arms crossed in impatience. Kyuubi's a pretty good healer, so it didn't keep me down for long. That's a relief, Rias said, sounding genuinely reassured. I didn't get a proper chance to thank you for saving me that night. Don't worry. Naruto paused as he felt her hand touch his cheek. In front of their queens, Rias leaned in close and pressed her soft lips against the skin of his whiskered cheek. Thought it could not have lasted for more than a moment. The event felt like an eternity for Naruto. He began to blush as he realized that, apart from Fuka stealing his lips, Rias was the only woman beside his mother to kiss him. Thank you, Naruto, Rias whispered into his ear, voice full of mirth. She pulled away, a light blush on her face. Akeno teased from behind Rias. Kyuubi's tails fluttered dangerously for a moment before she somehow managed to calm herself down. Now was not the time to take the queen's duties too seriously, lest someone gets hurt. Naruto mentally thanked her for holding back. Please come by the clubhouse after this business is done, Rias said, extending him an interesting invitation. I will offer you a proper thank you there. Sure, Naruto mumbled, unable to say anything more. Rias offered him a short wave before she continued past him to rejoin her peerage. Akeno similarly offered him a coquettish smile and wink before following Rias. He could only watch them leave with silent astonishment. That was one date he could definitely not refuse. That same night, two robed figures approached the church. One wore the insignia of the faithful, while the other remained nondescript. I assure you, Tsunade-sama, that Orochimaru-sama is fully capable of reviving the dead, said someone with a young man's voice, each syllable dripping out smoothly from beneath his hood. With the help of your twilight healing, of course. And? What does he need me to do? Asked Tsunade, her voice betraying anxiousness. To hear that she might see Dan again by using this cursed powers of hers was almost like a gift from the god she had given up on. He would like to offer you a demonstration by having you participate in an experiment, the man said, angling his head to look up at Tsunade. He flashed her a devious smile from beneath the hood. Then I will recover your lover's body from the church so that we may complete the transaction. The fear and excitement she was feeling threatened to burst out of Tsunade's chest. She knew it was a shot in the dark to accept the help of this stranger, but she had nothing left to lose. After being defeated by the devil, she started to realize that she may have lost her edge after all. If nothing else before she died, if she could bring Dan back, then she would consider her debts paid off. Still, that did not mean she trusted this Orochimaru. If you are trying to trick me, I swear I will make you pay, Tsunade voiced her thoughts, each word as sharp as a knife. The bespectacled man's dimples began to show from under his hood. She had met him after choosing to help the hospital staff heal the sick on a whim. He was apparently some up-and-coming doctor that had learned all he knew from this Orochimaru person. The thing that clenched her hope was when Kabuto explained that Orochimaru was not a human, but one of the rare Hebe creatures. If it's supernatural magic, then maybe there is a chance. No need to worry, Tsunade-sama, said the man as they entered the church. Our plans are foolproof, after all. The clacking of heavy chains being moved about served as Fuka's rude wake-up call. With a splitting headache, the redhead struggled to open her eyes. There were some torches illuminating the area around her, but the cavernous place was still rather dark. Some blurs of movement in her vision signaled she was not alone either. Fuka struggled to summon her light weapon but felt her arms unable to move. Similarly, when she tried to shift her legs, she felt them pressed together with something obstructing their freedom. Focus. A few rapid blinks later and Fuka quickly ascertained the situation involving her body. She was chained up to some kind of crucifix, her arms spread apart and legs pressed together to prevent any kind of movement. It was very clear to her that she was not going anywhere, not on her own at least. The crucifix was not a normal kind either, as she felt some kind of magic preventing her from summoning her weapons. Her eyes flicked around and realized she was in some large crypt. There was a single raised dais to the far right, against one of the ends of the room. She quickly recognized the distant figure as Rainier with her raven wings fluttering behind her. Next to her, a young blonde girl was chained up on a crucifix not unlike her own. All around them were fallen priests in dark robes, chanting some rubbish. They must have been in the process of some kind of ritual. Across the room from Fuka was in fact another crucifix with a girl she recognized from Ko Academy. The bespectacled girl was similarly chained and appeared to be unconscious. Just the thought of Rainier involving innocents in her little power games angered Fuka, but she quickly noted that struggling was futile. Where is Fuen? No other fallen angels were in the room, and she failed to sense their presence close by. Fuka gritted her teeth in shame as she fought to remain calm. She had been captured and left for dead by Fuen. If things kept going as they were, Fuka would not survive to see her revenge complete. Fuka was not the type of person to believe in miracles, especially since her fall from heaven, but she sincerely hoped the little pity party Rainier was throwing in the chamber was interrupted by someone. She would be fine with not being the only one to have their plans fail for the night. The barrier is complete, Rias, Akeno said, now in her shrine maiden outfit. Very well then, Rias pointed to the church now in front of them. Let's go save my naive little servant. Naruto stood alongside Rias' group with Kyuubi and Artemis. Behind them was the glowing white barrier the Citri group had activated to contain the fighting safely. There was now no escape for the contingent of fallen angels that were no doubt hidden somewhere inside. The surrounding area was made of a thick forest that could offer a considerable amount of cover for their enemies if the devils let their guard down. On the other hand, with the sheer manpower their combined groups had, Naruto doubted an ambush would really be effective against them. After they got near the entrance, Akeno jolted slightly. She turned to Rias and whispered something in her ear. Whatever it was, Naruto noticed Rias' eyes narrow. He felt soft fur brush up against his arm and noticed Kyuubi at his side. Whatever Akeno felt, she must have had a similar feeling. Naruto allowed her to lean in close and whisper into his ear. She and I must have sensed the same thing, 3 presences, deeper in the forest. They were waiting for us. Must be more fallen angels, Naruto muttered. Rias turned to address their gathered group after Akeno had finished her report. Despite the presence of enemies, her mood remained high. Everyone, listen up, Rias said. Her hands drifted to her hips as she began to speak with confidence brimming in her tone. Akeno and I will deal with the 3 outside. I leave Kaneko and Kiba in your care, Naruto. You sure? They are your servants, Naruto asked with one brow raised. Rias trusts you, Naruto-kun, Akeno noted with her usual cheery demeanor. We do as well, Kiba said, readying his sword. Kaneko simply offered him a nod in agreement. With their votes of confidence, he just felt like he had to accept. He would try not to let them down. All right, let's go then, Naruto said, his own peerage leading the way. Kiba and Kaneko passed Rias and Akeno. The knight paused when the president held his shoulder for a second. Rescue Aika, no matter what, Rias said, a hint of worry still left in her. Of course, President, Kiba promised. His reassuring smile offered relief to Rias. We definitely will, added Kaneko. A loud bang made them face forward to see Kyuubi had forced the bolted doors to cave in on themselves. Naruto remained back for a moment, while his 2 servants entered. He waved for Kiba and Kaneko to join them as he then rushed inside. The Occult Research Club offered each other final goodbyes as they split up. With a team like this, they had to succeed. Hello, devils. As they streamed into the decrepit interior of the church, a loud-pitched voice echoed across the room. Naruto followed Kyuubi's gaze and saw some kind of priest standing near the podium at the far end of the room. His white hair was trimmed short and matched the color of the rest of his uniform. In either hand he wielded a light sword and a small pistol that Naruto could only guess was loaded with light bullets. An exorcist. Considering the unnatural curvature of his smile, Naruto had to guess he was unstable. Sona did say the fallen had enlisted the washouts of the church. And who are you? Naruto asked. The man slouched over in dissatisfaction as he heard those words. He started to mumble some incomprehensible phrases that Naruto could only guess were insults leveled toward him. Just ask your damn friends over there. Gay boy and little kid, they both have already been acquainted with yours. He kissed the hilt of his blade. Truly. And then he kissed his gun. When he started to wag his tongue in anticipation, Naruto was glad to have the excuse to look away. Kiba joined the blonde at his side and Kaneko entered the pews. His name is Fried. I'm sure you have already guessed he's an exorcist, and not a very stable one at that, the male knight explained as he readied his own sword. With a sword, it's only fitting for you to take this one. Go on, Kiba, Naruto said. Kiba smirked as his sword shifted from gray steel into a dark black abyss. With pleasure. Oh yeah, come get some punk. Fried fired a few rounds from his pistol, all blocked by Kiba's blade. Their swords clashed and the two began to struggle to overpower each other. The Holy Eraser blade quickly attacked and destroyed the light energy within Fried's sword. When it looked like Kiba had gotten the advantage, Fried smirked and brought his pistol up in one lightning-fast motion. A golden projectile sailed across the room and impacted the gun with magically enhanced speed and power. Under the weight of the attack, Fried's pistol literally shattered around his hand and wounded him. Behind Naruto, Artemis lowered her bow and smiled from the successful hit. My turn, Kaneko muttered with the pew lifted above her head like it was nothing. Kiba leaped away as she threw the bench directly at the exorcist. From within his coat, Fried retrieved a second blade as he threw the first away. Trying the same thing twice, eh? With both hands on the hilt he cut through the pew with all his strength. Well, it ain't gonna. Kyuubi's tail whipped out and slammed into Fried's stomach. Ow. He whined as he flew back into, and then through the wall. That really fucking hurt. Kiba leaped forward to go through the wall and pursue Fried, who was now out of sight. A small spherical object was thrown into the room and forced everyone to pause. A bright light emerged as the object was revealed to be a flash bomb which forced the devils to shield themselves as the light served to effectively stun them. Damn, Kiba muttered, peering through the hole. He escaped. Naruto merely offered him a shrug as he and the others approached the altar. He wasn't our target anyway. Kyubi? Naruto called out to his queen as she inspected the area. The nine-tailed fox nodded and kicked the podium out of the way. Underneath it was a secret passage that led down into the crypts. That was their real objective and where their enemies were waiting for them, as well as their friends. Let's go, Naruto said, taking the lead. What the hell is going on up there? Tsunade looked up at the ceiling as dust fell to the floor from the constant banging. The loss of concentration made the twilight healing energy around her hands disappear. Underneath her on a metal operating table, an unconscious man groaned in pain. Tsunade, please focus on the patient. This is a very difficult procedure for them. From the opposite side of the table, hidden by the darkness of the room, she heard someone try and call her attention. Upon the end of every sentence they hissed like a snake. She turned back to the operation they were in the middle of and narrowed her eyes at her counterpart. The only part of him she could see was his glowing reptile eyes, an unnatural yellow color in the dark. I refuse to continue until I get some answers, Orochimaru. What are you even doing to this man? You told me this was merely a transplant surgery, Tsunade said, barking out her demands with little care for what the serpent across from her thought. And it is a transplant, Tsunade, the so-called doctor responded, not at all bothered by the fighting going on above. Do not concern yourself with the fallen playing their games upstairs. Do you take me for a fool? Tsunade backed away from the table. Her arms were raised as if she were ready to brawl. You are trying to double. From behind she sensed another presence. A hand came across the side of her face and plunged a syringe into her neck. She grabbed the wrist, even as she felt her muscles start to relax, and tried to break it. To her shock, the once human skin started to turn into something akin to rubber. I'm afraid that won't work on me, Tsunade-sama, said the man behind her, the same doctor she had identified earlier as Kabuto. She fell to the ground, face up, and unable to move. Her eyes watched as his wrist turned back into something solid. Now that she could see his eyes reflected off of the operating light, her lips curved in silent horror. You see, I'm half Hibi too. The footsteps of Orochimaru rounding the table sounded more and more distant as Tsunade felt her energy disappear. Her eyelids became heavy as the man with sickly white skin stood over her. A disgustingly unnatural smile splayed across his lips. I'm sorry, Tsunade, but I truly do need your twilight healing. Just for a different operation, he said, laughing at his method of trickery. You see, I want to try and perfect a method of turning others into Hibi too. So, this time we will need to heal you with twilight healing as the operation continues. No need to worry, Orochimaru promised Tsunade as her eyes shut. The anesthetic had almost completely run its course. Unfortunately, she managed to hear the last of his speech that made her blood run cold. If we fail, the only thing you have to deal with is an excruciatingly painful death. Naruto and the others finally reached the bottom of the staircase and found themselves in a large, open chamber of some sort. In front of them they could see dozens of hooded priests observing some kind of ceremony occurring on the raised dais on the other side of the room. They recognized the one fallen angel as she stood near the crucified Asia. Look, over there! Kiba pointed to their left. There on a similar crucifix was a struggling Aika, who looked alive and well. Kiba's exclamation must have been heard across the room as the girl stopped moving. She looked over toward them and realized that her friends had arrived. Whatever elation she had quickly left her when everyone heard Asia scream in pain. Kiba! Kaneko! Get Asia first! Aika pleaded from afar. Naruto-kun! Hearing his name called out by an oddly familiar voice, Naruto turned to the opposite side of the room to see Fuka was in the exact same predicament. She seemed rather relieved to see the mammon, and Naruto quickly figured out that she and the other fallen were not on good terms. Unfortunately, the reunion of friends and allies did not go unnoticed by the rest of the room. The entirety of the priests had turned to face them, deploying swords of light similar to Fried's. Naruto narrowed his eyes as the priests began to shift out of the way to make room for someone. From deeper within the pack came a short-looking young girl with jet black hair. She wore a traditional kimono, sans the sleeves shaded pink. Her lips were covered in a dark lipstick that matched her eyes. My name is Haku, said the girl. She looked rather out of place, and Naruto could not sense any kind of hate inside of her. You are intruding on my master Reiner's work and I cannot allow you to interfere. The devils could feel a heavy magic build-up as the girl held up her arm to gather energy. Despite her obvious pretense to attack, Naruto saw the regretful look she offered them. Please leave, so that I don't have to kill you. Naruto felt a little bad that a seemingly innocent kid got wrapped up in the fallen angel's schemes, but the devils were not going anywhere. He knew the others were waiting for his signal and started barking orders. Kiba, Kaneko. Get Aika. The two occult members nodded and started to make their way left. A posse of the priests attempted to stand in their way, but the fight quickly turned in favor of the skilled devils. Kyubi, handle Reiner. Artemis, take the girl. Naruto's orders were met with no hesitation from the queen and knight. He had the utmost faith that they could handle themselves, and they in turn knew he could do without their support for now. Kyubi used her great speed to bypass the priests and headed straight for the raised platform with Asia and Reiner. Anyone who dared get close were pushed away with Kyuubi's tails, enhanced by a demonic shroud. Haku noticed her try and moved past and gathered magic for a counterattack. She was forced to turn around and build an ice wall to block Artemis' barrage of arrows. The knight readied another arrow and disappeared in a blur of motion. And I'll handle Fuka, Naruto thought as he took off to the right to save his troublesome teacher. Come on, let's get you down, Kiba said from beneath Aika. The knight and rook of Rias Gremory had arrived to successfully rescue the pawn. She looked no worse from where, apart from the obvious stress of the ritual going on at the moment. Kiba's smile turned sour as he thought about what the president would do when she got her hands on Aika after disobeying the orders given to her. 1,000 spankings? EY. Kaneko shouted as she ripped the chains from Aika's legs and then moved on to the chest. Aika fell without the chains supporting her weight, but Kiba was there to hold her. It ended up very similar to a princess carry, and despite the knight's casual attitude, Aika scrambled to get off him with an embarrassed blush. They noticed Aika look back toward Asia on the platform. It appeared as though the ritual was completed as Asia looked completely unresponsive. Rainier had been forced away from the girl, however, by Naruto's queen. The two were fighting against each other nearby, but the path itself to Asia was mostly clear. Boosted gear! Aika shouted, holding her hand up to the sky. When nothing happened after a few seconds, she jerked the hand back. Behind her glasses, she leveled a glare that could only be described as death. Hey you damn dragon, wake up! She swung her arm around until the armored gauntlet finally appeared. Now that their group was battle-ready, Aika turned back to look at her compatriots. Her feelings were written very clearly across her face. We have to go get Asia. Kiba and Kaneko merely nodded and allowed the girl to lead them forward. This was part of their mission too. Naruto bypassed the priest, blocking him with the use of his flying thunder god seal. He was able to land very close to Fuka's restrained body, courtesy of the night she stole his first kiss. When he had finally gotten the chance to concentrate, Naruto had not hesitated to apply his special seal to her body in case something like this occurred. Naruto-kun, I'm very happy to see you, Fuka exclaimed, her voice filled with relief. You know, I didn't peg you for the damsel in distress, Naruto said with a bit of teasing. His hands reached for the chains around the woman's shapely legs, but then he thought of something. I could use this to my advantage. Naruto Fuka's happiness quickly shifted to confusion as she realized he was not rescuing her. Her tone quickly became rebellious. What the hell are you waiting for? Get me down. Not so fast, Naruto said, wagging his finger in front of her. He could not help but reveal a devious smirk, as he had quickly put together a new plan. Fuka reeled at the sight of the conniving Naruto, and she began to feel concerned. There was trouble in the air. This kind of trouble you've gotten into means you have to properly pay me back. I'm still kind of pissed about you stealing my energy, too, Naruto chided, mostly bluffing about the last part. If he could make her feel a little guilty, then she would be more open to his demands. Rias would surely approve of this kind of manipulation, right? If not her, Kushina would definitely be ecstatic. What? Fuka's temper boiled over as she realized her cute little student was trying to go against her. There was a tense moment between them before she tried to calm herself. She gave him a cute smile and used her playful tone to try and woo him. Listen, I promise not to do it without asking again. Happy? Her snappiness rose up again when Naruto's smirk failed to disappear. Come on, let me go. You said you have a sacred gear, right, Fuka-chan? Naruto asked, ignoring her. Eh? She exclaimed, completely thrown off by his question. Why yeah, I do. What of it? That's all I need to know, he proclaimed. Then you'll let me go? Fuka asked. Her smile returned. Naruto offered her a huge smile as he thrust his pointer finger toward her. It was finally time to turn the tables on this teacher of his, and he knew just the method to fluster her. You're going to be my next knight, Fuka-chan. Fuka was taken aback by his declaration and was unable to respond. Then, she let out the first thing to come to mind. What the hell are you talking about? Damn you! Rainier shouted as she spawned a light spear and threw it at Kyuubi. The 9 tails refused to move and instead used one of its tails to smash the light weapon to pieces. Given her level of strength, Rainier's powers could do nothing but bounce off of the Queen Devil. In response, the morale of the fallen angel was quickly dropping as her back was literally up against a wall. Kyuubi leaped up into the air to meet Rainier. She tried to fly away, but Kyuubi used her own wings to catch up. They were already close to the wall and the fallen angel quickly ran out of room to maneuver. There was nowhere to run as Kyuubi's fist sent Rainier flying into the crypt wall, shaking the foundation. The 9 tails noticed the sacred gear on her fingers activate and start to heal her of the wounds. Admirable, but her skill was nothing in comparison to Kyuubi's own healing.